Wow, welcome to the show, everybody. Fam, you're need a little bit of light there. We can't see you. Um, maybe you can brighten up everybody's life. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is TruthWire Tuesday. I just made that up on the fly, fam. You're gonna probably shoot me down for being cheesy, but it is a Tuesday, and this is TruthWire, and this is like one of the first broadcasts we have. The morphing from the Convo couch to this new channel. I'm trying to dance around and weave around all the censorship out there. Still demonetized on the Convo couch for God knows how long. Later on, we're going to bring in Matt Weinglass. Matt, just like Fiorella, have both had their YouTubes taken down. So censorship is still a thing out there, ladies and gentlemen. We are on our Twitters, Fiorella's Twitters, my Twitter, Matt Weinglass's Twitter. We have a Rumble down below. You can join the locals for free if you want to. And, of course, we're still kicking a little bit on Rockfin. And you can leave a tip over there if you want. All the links are down below on how to help out independent media. And we're here to brighten up everyone's life, fam, because the days that have just gone by are probably as dark as they've been in quite some time. I don't think the American people understand the crux of what's going on in Syria. But luckily, we have you here today to kind of explain what's going on. And I think one of the things that's going over a lot of people's head, fam, I live in a community in Boca Raton, right, in Highland Beach, which is heavily Jewish and heavily Catholic, right? Those are the two predominant religions here. People are very close to the religion. What I think a lot of people don't understand, I think a lot of Jewish people here in Boca don't understand exactly what the Zionist nation is doing. And I don't think a lot of Christians understand what this means for the Christian population in Syria, which I believe had one of the highest Christian populations after we couped Saddam Hussein, and a lot of the Christians were run out of Iraq. So why don't you just take it away, unless you have anything to add to the conversation outside of Syria. Why don't you just get the ball rolling and educate the people on what's really happening out there?
Where to begin on all of this? I mean, it was entirely, I would say, devastating, to say the least, for everybody. Not just the people who supported Syria from afar, but the people who lived in Syria, the people who have been fighting this war for 14 years. Because we're going to go back to 2011, right? And we're going back to this time when the last war in Syria began, and the advances that were made by the Syrian Arab army and parts of the Russian military. Because remember, the Russians were there fighting with the Syrian Arab army against the terrorists that were fomented, created, and manipulated, and of course utilized by the West and the NATO powers. So you have this entire structure that really was just 14 years of Assad and the entire Syrian government taking these sanctions, taking the being vilified and being painted as a monster, a brutal dictator, all of these things. And now, after this, I will say, as the title of this says, the fall of Syria is the fall of the resistance. And I'm not going to mince around my words here, because the entire purpose of what the General Clark said before is pretty much almost there. We talk about the 5 countries in 7 years. Well, we have Iran left, because Lebanon already has a U.S. influence government, because people don't always make the distinction in Lebanon. You have the Lebanese government that has Hezbollah within it, but it's not controlled by Hezbollah fully. Hezbollah is a part of the resistance, just like Hamas is the part of the resistance. But does Hamas control the Palestinian Authority? No, actually, they're quite at opposition to it. So when we talk about Lebanon, the entire point of Syria, what Syria has acted as, and why I think without Syria, this would have happened a long time ago. It's acted as this corridor where there would have been the transfer of weapons from Iraq and Iran into, via Iraq and Iran into Lebanon, into that way to get to Hezbollah. And that was how this was going to happen with Syria. But now as you all know, Syria is entirely controlled by the HTS factions, which are Turkish rebranded, Erdogan approved Al Qaeda terrorists. And among other factions, right, you have the Kurds, you have other different groups there that, I mean, if you really want to get the lowdown on that, go back to an article published by Vanessa Beeley on her Substack from a few years ago, and it literally goes through all of the different factions because it is kind of a lot. But there's various factions, and the ones that came in were the HTS, and these were, of course, supported by Erdogan. But let's go back to who Erdogan is. Erdogan was always, as a leader, acting as what many would say a wild card. But for me, every single action he has taken has been not just to favor Turkey, but to favor himself, to redeem his dream of the Ottoman Empire. This emerging Ottoman Empire, reemergence, I should say. And that is what was used to get him to fold. Because if you recall, he wasn't necessarily a friend to Israel. He wasn't necessarily before friendly with Russia. They were at odds. But after the attacks on the Nord Stream pipelines, after the attacks and sanctions on Russia, Turkey became a necessary ground for neutrality to connect the pipelines for Russia, obviously to the Black Sea corridor, but also to, for example, allow the travel of Russians to many places. Turkey is one of the only ways you can travel more quickly as a Russian, because you can't really go other places. The economic industries are tied. There have been more emerging ties between Russia and Turkey. So while you could say this was a betrayal to Russia with what Erdogan did, which Russia should have expected it, because again, Erdogan has always been this wishy-washy con man type of character. He has always been in one foot with the West and the other one outside. He's playing anybody that talks about BRICS and multipolarity. And so you have all of that in the background before even any of this happened. Yeah. And then you have this whole situation that emerges right after the Lebanon-Israeli ceasefire, right, which was really the Hezbollah Israel ceasefire.
Can I make one comment or ask a question about Turkey real quick? Because I've watched all the shows you've done with Vanessa Beeley for quite some time. Even before this incident, we were talking about Turkey back in the days whether it would be with Azerbaijan and whatnot. Is it safe to say that regardless of what you think of Erdogan, he's a crafty, shifty player in this game? In other words, even at the UN, he always gets something for his vote. Hate him or love him, he is a smart player in this game. Is it safe to say that?
I don't think anybody really likes Erdogan, but I agree that he is like extremely cunning of an individual, because remember, he was almost at defeat. He almost got ousted himself a few years ago, if you recall. And he reemerged. He reemerged because he realized that the only way he could get the power he wanted, because he's somebody that wants power, is by succumbing to the Zionist entity. And that's exactly what he did. He clearly coordinated with Israel, because there was in the middle of the night, and we're gonna show you this, in the middle of the night, it was like 4:45, 4:30, you started seeing the complete and total invasion into towards Damascus, towards the surrounding areas outside of Damascus, completely just by the Syrian terrorists. Well, not Syrian, excuse me, the entire battalion of multiple ethnicities that make up these terrorist groups, including Uyghurs, by the way, people from Uzbekistan, Dagestan, all of these places that have been pretty much courted to go into Syria. This is why so many people that supported the Syrian Arab Army were upset, because they say, well, this is, a free Syria. The majority of these people aren't even Syrian at the very basic level. They're from outside. They're mercenaries, essentially. So the question of how this happened because in the background, and I think we can pull it up. Let's see, what is the first thing I have? Jayme, what's the first thing we have? The first link, kind of want to go in order. Okay. Yeah, okay. So this is exactly what we're talking about. So there was supposed to be source based, right? On the ground, there was supposed to be some sort of deal made. It looked like there was this deal that was going to happen between Turkey, between Russia, and then you had the Iran and Syria. You had Assad. And it looked like after Astana, there were these talks. And you saw Lavrov. I don't know if you all recall, I posted what Lavrov said, but he was talking about how Syria and the government of Syria had to have a conversation with all factions. He stated that. Lavrov never once mentioned Israel, by the way. He only mentioned that Syria had to have talks with the opposition, that it was wrong for these terrorists, and he called them terrorists, to be there and have access to Syria, that there were Russia was behind Syria and allowing peace to prevail, that sort of diplomatic talk, political talk, and all of that. But he never once mentioned Israel. He never, and he did mention that the Syrian government, Assad's government, had to hear what the opposition had to say, which to me signaled that there would be a deal. Also, around this time, we had been hearing here and beyond talks about peace between Ukraine and Russia. And so the perception that was already there for everybody was like, this is interesting. And then you add Iran into the picture, Iran that never acted when it should have against Israel. And I think everybody should admit that if Iran had actually acted against Israel in the way it should have, as it said, as many of Iran's supporters said they would, for the axis of resistance, we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing now. I think at the very least, Israel wouldn't have had the capacity, because what would have happened is Hezbollah wouldn't have been forced to this non-ceasefire, because it was called a ceasefire, but immediately Israel started breaking it. I don't know how many times. And what did that do? It gave a lull for Israel, who was pretty much really on the ground. I mean, Israel was pretty much almost done militarily, politically, internally. It was pretty much, that's it. And what happened after that? This happened after that. And Israel was allowed to go in, not just by Erdogan. That's the thing, because Iran failed to act. And a lot of people are going to be upset that I'm saying this, but if Iran had crippled Israel, that ceasefire wouldn't have happened. That ceasefire benefited Israel more than it benefited Hezbollah. And then what that ended up doing is that inaction allowed Israel to have the time to have conversations with Washington, because they did during that time, and to sit and then while this ceasefire is being celebrated, what ended up happening is they immediately attacked what they call the buffer zone, to create a buffer zone. And now they're pretty much in Damascus. They've pretty much been bombing Damascus nonstop. So I'm not saying it's only Iran, because there are many problems that existed in Syria within. And I'm going to talk about those problems as well. There are many things that Bashar al-Assad could have done, but there are many people out there right now completely flipping. People who considered Bashar al-Assad a father figure, people who considered Bashar al-Assad, this amazing man, are completely and totally flipping, pretending that this guy, rewriting history, pretending that he was some sort of actual brutal dictator. And then you have the people who have always been fence sitting and saying, well, Assad may be a dictator, but the Syrian people, no, what is true is that without Syria, there wouldn't have been this long of a free Syria, for an actual free Syria for people. There wouldn't have been this time for the resistance to even have a chance. But things have shifted on the global, I would say the global chessboard, because now they don't really need Syria. And what the perception is that Syria, when it came to Syria, Bashar al-Assad had an army that was pretty much depleted. It was not ready. It was not ready to take this on. There was no Syrian Arab army in Aleppo. They had been outside of Aleppo because for the last 6 years, there was nothing there for them to do. And Iran did warn Bashar al-Assad. That's been confirmed. Russia mentioned something to Bashar al-Assad about Erdogan. So there was these inklings about Erdogan, that all of that was mentioned. But he didn't act on them. He did start welcoming in the Gulf states, because everybody up until the last few days was saying they wanted to normalize relations with Syria. That's what the Gulf states were saying. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about the countries that are Arab Gulf states. They were saying, we want to normalize things with Syria. And as this was happening and people had a very positive perception as to what was going to happen with Syria, then you had all of this come into the forefront. And what does it do? Ultimately, it's going to stop these weapons and this aid from getting to Hezbollah. Hezbollah won't have a shot because Israel's already taking over this part of Syria. And now, if Hezbollah doesn't have a shot, they're going to take all of Gaza, all of the West Bank, Israel is. All of Syria is going to be partitioned into different groups. You're going to have Turks in the north. You're going to have the majority of these terrorist groups. And then you're going to have the United States, which of course has also been striking Syria. And the Syria that we all knew is no more. It's completely, and it's not going to come back. Unfortunately, I don't think so.
It's done.
Unless Iran does something. And I don't think Iran will do something. So what's left is Iran.
Can we ask that question? Let's start, because there's so many questions I have, fam. You know, Russia's role, the Ukraine war role. We'll get to that in a second. Let's answer this question right here, because from what I understand, that Syria would funnel a lot of weapons into Hezbollah, through Syria. And now with that being gone, and Hezbollah seemed to be more tied to Iran, surely more than Hamas was, right? Why would Iran just stay on the sidelines and stay put on this and not retaliate and weaken Israel? I mean, our good friend Mohammed Morani was been wagging his finger. Oh, Israel will see what's going to happen, yada, 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 yada. We saw one time months ago that they did something, and they really didn't cause too much damage. They showed they could hit Israel with hypersonic missiles, but that was it. Everything fizzled out. So why, in your opinion, did Iran stay on the sideline and not retaliate against Israel and allow this to happen?
Well, I mean, they're not going to tell you this, and this is just my opinion based on what I know and the sources I have. We have all seen what Pezeshkian has done and how he has portrayed himself and portrayed Iran since he took over, right? Like this, he is not President Raisi. This all goes back to the helicopter crash / assassination of President Raisi, because everyone was taking Iran for its word. Not everyone, but most people, when Iran said, oh, it doesn't look like this was an assassination, there was blah, 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 this weather, blah, blah, blah. And so people were like, okay, you did this investigation. Why wouldn't you want, if this is very weird, what are the odds? You have, like, why are two of the leaders of Iran on the same helicopter? What is going on here, right? And so then you had Pezeshkian come in, and what ended up happening is the diplomatic facade was that Iran was going to come in and try to normalize relations with everybody, including the West. This president in Iran is a reformist. The president in Iran is a reformist. I have to say that there's a difference between a reformist and a revolutionary. It is night and day. A reformist goes in and they want to have a relationship with the powers that be. They want to stop sanctions. They want to open up the business sector. This isn't a bad thing normally, but when you want to normalize relations with the country and the entities that want to see you fall, you're a complete idiot. The country and the entities that literally have been salivating to see you fall. And now they have the most Zionist administration coming in. Yeah, I mean, it is very obvious. And by the way, people don't know this, but there were invitations from certain sectors of the Iranian government that were bringing in people from CNN who had ties to the CIA, the intelligence apparatus, this past year. And some of us realized, and we were like, why is that happening? Why are they bringing, what's going on here? Now, does the president control everything in Iran? No. Obviously, that's not how Iran works. Iran is not a secular country. And so therefore, yes, there is a possibility that it's not necessarily going to be what he wants. There's so many people out there that are going to tell you Iran, it's not on them. What happened to Syria, they did everything they could. It's not on them 100%, but they didn't do everything they could. Because when you talk about NATO as a bloc, and this is what I'm going to say before we go through specific things, look at NATO, right? NATO as a bloc. When the United States tells them, hey, you can't have an economic relationship with Russia because Vladimir Putin is a dictator, do they listen? Yes. When they say Bashar al-Assad is a brutal dictator, you can't have a relationship with Bashar al-Assad. You need to participate in these sanctions, in this media war against Bashar al-Assad. Do they listen? Yes. When the United States refuses to recognize President Maduro of Venezuela as president, what happens? They have a whole thing at the UN. They get together and they all follow in line. Well, if there's nothing to counteract something like NATO, if there's not that unity to counteract something like NATO, you're not going to have the ability to actually face it. Because if everybody acts as individual states that are just going to stand by when one of their allies goes down, well, it's not going to happen. When we talk about existential fights, what's happening right now, what was happening is an existential fight between the East and the West. Essentially, to put it simplistically, you have NATO, you have the United States, you have Canada, you have Five Eyes, basically going at Russia, going at Iran, going at the global South, because believe me, Latin America is on the chopping block. It is next. You have all of them going after the countries that have suffered so much through sanctions and all of that. If you don't band together as these countries, and I'm not talking about BRICS because BRICS is an economic bloc. It's not exactly what NATO is. And BRICS is still in its formation. It hasn't gotten there yet. And they have been following the UN, which the UN, you shouldn't be following the UN because the UN isn't an entity that is up to date with how things should be. And so if you're just going to stand aside and if you're not going to act as a unit, it weakens you. And what has Iran not done? They didn't respond. Russia has been extremely patient, almost to their own detriment, I would say, with the red lines that NATO has completely destroyed at all times. And this isn't just coming from me. This is coming from a lot of people who have said, why have they allowed so much NATO to get away with so much when it comes to this? Look at Georgia. Look what's happening in Georgia. Look what's happening in Moldova. Look what's happening in Romania. They're attacking Russia from another front. If there's not an understanding that this isn't just Russia or China or Iran or Syria, this is all of them essentially at war with the West. And these people in government, I guess, don't realize that yet. They don't understand that concept. They're united. The powers that be, they're united. They stand united together. Even if it's for something evil, they're together, they're fighting, they're united. But the people who are fighting them, the anti-imperialist sector, the axis of resistance, they're not united.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to bring them down.
Well, I want to talk a little bit. I want to piggyback on that right now because a lot of people are kind of in the dark and they really are looking at Donald Trump as an anti-interventionist. He made this statement the other day, and it says opposition fighters in Syria in the unprecedented move have totally taken over numerous cities in a highly coordinated offensive. Yes, they have, and are now on the outskirts of Damascus, obviously preparing to make a very big move towards taking out Assad. Russia, because they are so tied up in Ukraine, and with the loss of their over 600,000 soldiers, mostly Ukrainian soldiers, by the way, seem incapable of stopping this literal march through Syria, a country they have protected for years. This is where former President Obama refused to honor his commitment to protecting the red line in the sand, and all hell broke out with what's that. And then let me just go to the next part, because then he continues to say, with the Russians stepping in now, but now they are like possibly Assad himself being forced out, and it may actually be the best thing that can happen to them. There was never much of a benefit in Syria for Russia other than to make Obama look really stupid. In any event, Syria is a mess, but it is not our friend. And the United States should, in all caps here, have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved. And I made this tweet right here, fam, which I said, let's be clear. Donald Trump was 100% in favor for the fall of the Syrian government. Don't be fooled by his let's stay out of it comments. His actions towards Syria when he was the president set the stage for what happened yesterday. His actions in Ukraine also led to the war between the Kiev regime and Russia. Whether you like it or not, Trump is a servant to Israel. Everything we are witnessing with the regime change operations didn't happen overnight.
Yep.
They are the result of a series of actions played out by the West and its allies. The U.S. and Israel are imperialist thugs that need to be stopped before they attempt to colonize the whole planet.
Yep.
My question is, because I'm hearing this right now, would you agree? I'm just going to ask you the question. Does Trump bear any responsibility for the condition of Syria today? I don't have the video, fam, but he said it clearly. We're taking the oil. Syria has oil. We're taking the oil and taking the resources. I once remember doing an interview with Vanessa Beeley, and her saying, I don't think the sanctions are hurting as much as the stealing of the resources. In other words, she would say Syria would have a good shot if they just weren't taking that oil and taking it into Israel, and they were allowed to keep their resources, and then maybe they can deal around the sanctions. Does Trump bear any responsibility for the condition of Syria today?
Trump expanded the Greater Israel Project, which is what we're seeing be played out live right now in the world for us. Trump has been one of the most pro-Zionist presidents, and his administration will be. Of course he did. He enacted the Caesar Act. The Caesar Act pretty much enabled more sanctions against Syria. The Caesar Act made the economic conditions difficult. So it exacerbated a problem that already existed in Syria. One of the problems that you could say also existed was the same problem that exists everywhere. You had corruption in terms of the certain sectors of the government outside of Assad's ability to do that, because even in Russia, Putin can't control everything. Believe me, there are still problems, just like there are everywhere else. So it just exacerbated an already tough situation for a country that's endured 14 years of war plus sanctions. And again, many people, though, if you actually were looking at Syria even just a few years ago, in spite of the problems, they respected Assad because of what he did and how he maintained the country together. What you're seeing now is not just, as you mentioned, right, the complete demise of any sort of secular government, because Syria was a country you could go to and you weren't forced to wear a hijab. You weren't forced to wear, it wasn't, a religious country like Iran, but there were also Christian communities there. You could go to the beach and it'd be like a normal place. It was unique in that aspect. So it's very interesting for the US and those criticizing Assad's government when they look at Syria and they call him a brutal dictator, but now who stands there is a terrorist, an actual head-chopping terrorist, and the entire groups that even Erdogan was considering. He was putting out there that they're not allowed to be there, that Turkey would control them. By the way, that was supposed to happen, but that's clearly not happened, because now these terrorists are being used and rebranded as Boy Scouts by CNN and the entire West. So, I
They're
mean,
woke
Donald
jihadists,
Trump,
fam. Woke jihadists. Come on.
but I don't even, I told you, I'm like done with the whole woke, anti-woke thing, but they're rebranding them
Yeah.
as complete and total, just like, oh yeah, like a few years ago there was a bounty on his head, and now Jelani is the guy that's supposed to take Syria out of, the disastrous dictatorship that it existed. And they're literally killing people now. They're going after the military. They're going after many people. And one of the things, fam, I just want to show real quick, there's been a lot of things online that weren't entirely true, right? And I got to highlight this next tweet by
Did
Vanessa.
you see the question
because
that I just put up there too, by the way? I mean, you were talking about
no, I didn't.
all these. It says, what does the fall of Syria mean for the Christians that live there? I mean, I think this is important to point out.
There's no Christians anymore. No,
they're gone.
Not. I mean, I don't think the Republicans are going to care either way, but I understand why you're pointing it out. I mean, there's a hypocrisy there, right? Because like I said, in Syria, you could be a Christian, you could be anything. And I'm not saying you can't be that in Iran or other countries, but Syria was a secular country where you could have multiple religions.
Same thing with Iraq, right? And these are historic Christian sites that they're destroying in Gaza.
They're destroying
in Syria. They've destroyed in Iraq. I mean, the Christians should care. The Republicans should care, but they're being duped by Donald Trump now saying these things. But go ahead. I'm sorry for cutting that off.
Okay, so I just want to show this tweet because a lot of things were said about the army abandoning its positions. Some of the army did abandon their positions, but it wasn't everybody, because this is what people are saying. Oh, Syria didn't fight. There was nothing there. So the tweet was that Syrian Arab army abandoned their bases and ran. A Russian officer shows the scale of exodus. Government troops changed into civilian clothes and disappeared into the population, leaving their weapons and kits behind. Did that happen? Yes, that happened to a degree, but not entirely, because Sergei Kissel, the one who was completely replaced because of this, by the way, because he was shady and seen as a traitor long before this happened, but it took this to happen for him to be replaced. He abandoned the 25th Division east of Aleppo, just as he did in Kharkov, because again, he had already done this in Kharkov. So the question was, why the hell did they send this guy to Syria when he was already shady and doing things in Kharkov? So reinforcements saw him running back to his base. And this is firsthand testimony. I knew of this as it was happening from inside Syria. So to me, there has to be this entire time, there hasn't been definitive information. One of the reasons for that is on purpose, because the Syrian moderate rebels, the terrorists, were making videos and creating things. They came in from sleeper cells. This is what we talked about before. They came in, they were activated. They were already inside. The army that was completely and totally not ready for this was demoralized because they were not getting paid enough. And this is a common problem in many countries where people don't get paid enough. You need to pay people enough. They weren't getting paid enough. And what ended up happening is they were paid off. And now that's also been verified, that there were sectors that came in and paid some of them off. But on top of that, you had this general who had already committed betrayal in Kharkov and is somehow here also doing the same thing. He was fired and he was replaced, but by that time it was too late. And this is, again, like, it's not the only thing that happened. So what I'm seeing here is everybody tried to say, oh, this is just on Syria. This is just on Syria. When no, I think what we're going to see, Pasta, is we're going to see a deal made between Russia and Ukraine very soon. We're going to see all of Syria partitioned. And the perception is, in Latin America, the perception is, well, if Russia and Iran didn't really stick by Syria, what's there protecting us?
Yeah.
That's the perception. Yeah. And that, I'm telling you all, because I know that's the perception. We know that that's the perception. And are they wrong to feel that way? No, they're not wrong to feel that way.
Well, I will say this much, that we had somebody in our anti-imperialist chat, and I love him. He says, well, it looks like the decisions that Russia makes are not ideological. They're more geopolitical. And I was like, duh, it's, is it obvious day today? I never thought it was about ideological alignments, even though,
No.
there were some alignments with some of our Latin American brothers and sisters and the old Russian government of sorts too as well. But my next question was, and I think, you kind of alluded to this, and it was in Donald Trump's statement, about, he's saying Russia was too busy over in Ukraine. They can't deal with Syria anymore. They only got involved with Syria to make Obama look stupid. I think there was more to it than that. Obviously,
Yeah.
it was about taking care of Israel, and that's where Donald Trump is lying, right? But did Russia make a deal with the U.S. to turn their back on Syria for a ceasefire in the Ukraine? I mean, because almost immediately after meeting Zelensky and kissing Macron almost fell down trying to run to Donald Trump. Donald Trump called for a ceasefire the next day.
Yeah. Well, the perception is that there was a deal made. And the thing is, though, it's true that Russia is busy in Ukraine. It's true that Russia's responsibility is to Russia, that it's not to Syria. But what I'm saying is, as long as we continue to act like this, they're going to take down everybody one by one, because if you trace everything that's going to happen now, it's going to go back against Iran, it's going to go back against Russia, and eventually it's going to go back against China. So if we're looking at the short term gain to make some sort of deal with Erdogan, to make some sort of deal to just, they didn't do anything against Syria. They just didn't do more. And they could have. But again, they could have, because I don't know if you all know this, but the amount of army that Russia's using in Ukraine is very minimal. They're not using the majority of their forces. Donald Trump claimed that they lost 600,000. That's entirely false, and that's been completely debunked by Russia, the Russian
Ukraine has lost 600,000.
Ukraine has lost a lot of people. Yeah. So, everybody's saying, well, it's not Russia's responsibility, blah, blah, blah. I mean, no, but they were fighting. They were fighting along with the Syrians. They were fighting these terrorist groups that they have considered them terrorist groups that are entirely banned. Al-Qaeda and all of these are entirely banned in Russia. They have been attacked by these same factions. The factions that came in and did the Crocus attack were literally the same type of mercenaries that were coming in and doing this in Syria from these countries. Because this is how they were trained. Ukrainian militants were also there in Syria. So again, there shouldn't be separation if we want to get to the greater thing, right?
Yeah.
But as you said, Pasta, and as I've been saying for a long time now, Russia is not a communist country. And I think many people still have placed all of these, have looked at Russia and BRICS and multipolarity with rose-colored glasses. And I've been talking about this now for a while, about this idea of multipolarity, oh, it's so great. Let's talk about a multipolar world and all of this. No, first of all, that takes time. Second of all, you're not going to have that in what you think it is. You can have multilateralism in the sense of multiple empires, and that could be considered a multipolar world. Yeah. But what people were putting on multipolar world, what that means is everything's going to be equal and it's going to be great. That's the intent. But I mean, really what it is the weaker countries, the countries that don't have an army now, because look at Syria, right? Without an army, you just fall. The countries that have been weaponized by the West and used, and that are now starting to build relationships with Russia, with China, with the more powerful countries that hold nuclear weapons. Those countries are very vulnerable because they realize that they're on their own. And if you have something ideological, like say communism or some sort of ideological belief, like the axis of resistance, that's supposed to mean that you're fighting for something bigger than yourself. You're fighting for something bigger than your nation state. Look at what Hezbollah is doing. Look at what Hamas, look at what Yemen, Ansarullah. That they don't have a reason to be bombing Israel necessarily directly, but do they? Of course they do, because they're fighting for the entire axis. The problem is not everybody thinks like that. And so what you have is a complete and total fall from these clouds that everybody was in into reality. That when you don't have an ideological fight, you're going to go back to pragmatism, which is fine, but then you're sectioning yourself off. And what we're going to have is a normalization, because I can tell you right now that the majority of people here want to end this war in Ukraine. The majority of people in government, they want to normalize relationships with the United States. Russia has always had the desire to be a part of Europe. It's Eurasia. Russia's a huge country. So you have the Asian part of Russia, and then you have the European part of Russia. When I'm talking about Moscow, St. Petersburg, especially St. Petersburg, you're talking about essentially European cities. You're talking about this mindset of having that ability of thinking Europe is the greatest thing. Now, of course, that has changed with all the way Europe has developed and how it's completely exposed itself into something Russia wants nothing to do with. And Putin went from wanting to join NATO to completely, obviously, opposing it. And they're fighting an existential war. Yes. But they're not, you can't do that alone. You cannot do that alone.
Yeah. And I would also say, fam, that not only the Russian people are wanting to be part of Europe, Vladimir Putin himself, even though he was chosen by the hardliners to get in there after Boris Yeltsin, that fall down drunk, just turned his back on what happened in Belgrade, he still tried to normalize relationships with the United States. Remember him fishing with George W. Bush? I just like to say Vladimir Putin's the only one who caught a fish today, right? Like, so it was like he was trying his ass off to normalize relationships. Yeah. And I also want to say, fam, that right now with this move of Syria falling and Russia doing whatever they did, you said you suspect that there was some type of deal, and that's the talk that's going on. This is going to make the truther community, who talk about a one world government working together, even more fortified in their decisions. And listen, in their theories, excuse me. And when I try to explain to people, like, why are people like Margaret Kimberly so upset right now? Why are people like Danny Haifong and those other people who are talking about, my God, this is so depressing, everybody in the anti-imperialist chat, right? Why are they so upset? Is because it almost feels like that if this is what it appears to be on the surface, that the United States and the West and Israel's psychos got their way. And eventually Russia and Iran just said, all right, we just want this to end anymore, right? We don't want to deal with this anymore. You get your way. We'll give you Syria. Just stop what's going on in Ukraine so we can get on with our all everyday business. What does this actually mean for the BRICS nations moving forward now, fam? Because the fall of Syria is going to kind of spark some things like you said, in Latin America, they're like, wait a second, why are we going to even get involved with BRICS right now when we know they'll capitulate to the West psychos at the end of the day?
The West is already in BRICS. You have India, you have Turkey. I mean, they're not Western necessarily. Well, Turkey is, but they have relationships with the West. And BRICS was never meant to be a bloc that's going to be anti-West. They've said it themselves many times. It's meant to be a bloc where everybody's point of view is respected and all of these things. But they are fighting.
It's about de-dollarization, right? It's about taking away the global currency from the United States and saying we have to have balance, right? Right.
Eventually, but that de-dollarization aspect has been largely exaggerated. I mean, the BRICS bank and the development of the BRICS currency is not going to happen anytime soon. The dollar is still being used. The ruble is at 100 rubles to the dollar. I mean, this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. And that's the problem, because while that is being developed and created and push, what you have to have is an actual attack against those preventing it from happening, because they're not going to allow it. They're going to have people that are there as Trojan horses, right? They're going to have India. They're going to have Turkey. They're going to have Saudi Arabia. I mean, we're talking about these countries that have been detrimental to the Palestinian cause, to the axis of resistance. This is why you had Nicolas Maduro be the only one really flat out call it out and talk about what was happening in Gaza and talked about what Israel was doing. The other thing, Pasta, that people haven't pointed out is Russia's relationship with Israel. Russia has a relationship with Israel.
Lavrov especially, right?
Lavrov
he just
especially,
seems like he's so pro-Zionist. It's like, come on, Lavrov.
But it's not just about this relationship with Israel in terms of like, geopolitics. It's a relationship that goes back to the fact that there are a lot of um, Jews in Russia. It's like an ethnic group. Millions of Russians were living in Tel Aviv. You have that connection. That connection isn't going to go away, especially when you had the Soviet Union also act on that connection as well. This is where the conservatives get the whole thing like, oh, communists are all, they're all Jews, all communists are Jews. This is where you get that. But it's not, it's a lot more, there's a lot more nuance to that. It's not necessarily true. But what I'm saying is you have that relationship that's a cultural relationship. You have that relationship that's geopolitics, because Russia has always acted as a neutral ground in the Middle East to try to maintain some sort of stability. That has been their role. Yeah. But you literally have now Israeli and US forces going after areas where there were Russian soldiers. You've been having that who have been fighting with Syrians. You also have the fact that Israel will always be the United States' #1 ally. They have like a symbiotic relationship. You're not going to get it. They're never going to do that. They're never going to get away. Just like Erdogan's never going to leave NATO. So they have to make the decision to really fully break ties. And from what I'm seeing, that hasn't happened yet. And it's not happening soon, because there wasn't even a single mention of Israel at all in Astana between what was said. Only today, I think it was, that it was mentioned by the UN representative. He said what Israel's doing is not correct, that violating this charter by going into Syria and going so far into Syria that Israel's using the excuse that they're allowed to. And he said, no, that's not true. So they've called out Israel multiple times. But I mean, it's one thing to call out Israel, and it's another thing to actually directly be like, okay, stop, you're done. They haven't done that yet. Yeah. So this is why people feel this way about what happened with Israel. But I have to say one more thing. Yeah. Bashar al-Assad was given full asylum here with his family. So that is also what many have pointed out. Oh, look, what Russia's doing. But I believe that's also part of this whole thing. Now, Russia has said that they were not at all involved in what Syria did and what they didn't do. So they have put out the statement saying they had nothing to do with any sort of deal that Syria made. I'm not blaming Russia, and I'm not entirely blaming Iran. I am simply saying that certain actions combined together have led to the conclusion. And if they took different actions, particularly Iran, as I've said, there would have been, I think, a different outcome.
I got to say that you're going to laugh about this, because the relationship with Russia and Israel reminds me of that guy we met, the German dude we met in Colombia, where we were sitting there, we were agreeing on everything. And as soon as we started talking about Israel, because of the history of Germany and, the Holocaust, oh, no. You can't touch Israel. You know what I'm saying? They have that same, the Bolsheviks were in, that started eventually the Zionist nation were in Russia, and Russia kind of walks on those eggshells. You can see it with Lavrov, where they don't want to go full blast against Israel. There's that tenderness there, right? And it feels like that relationship is very much the same with Russia and Lavrov. Not even just Lavrov, with Russia in general when it comes to Israel. We are getting into the top of the hour with the segment. We should bring in our guest, our co-host, our contributor. But this is something. Look at this comment right here. The axis of resistance didn't go out with a bang or a whimper, but with a loud, wet fart. What a sick joke this world has become. Russia and Iran sacrificed Syria to make a deal with the West. Let's bring in our contributor. You know him, ladies and gentlemen. Matt Weinglass from the Homeless Left is here. Matt, we're going to let you do something nice here before we get into the next segment. Fiorella just laid out a lot of information over there. She's been following us for quite some time. Uh, give us your cherry on top on what you feel this whole situation is, and what's the most what we should take most from this whole fall of Syria more than anything else. Because what I'm taking is the fact is that, holy cow, like the accents of resistance, it's gone. Everybody's on the chopping block now. It seems like, the decisions that Russia does make is all geopolitical. And if that means sacrificing Syria to the West in Israel, so be it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for having me on with you guys. This has been a very thoughtful conversation here, and I think that one of the biggest takeaways is, this is a significant moment. The fall of Syria. We're not going back. This is a moment where, and Palestine is directly affected by this. The resistance movement is pretty much dead at this point when Israel has an opportunity to declaring this as a victory. And we heard Netanyahu's speech about this, that this is something to celebrate. And of course, everybody in the West is on board. There is no pushback at all. We're talking about, this moment of liberation of the Syrian people. We should all be just furious about this. Obviously, we are. Obviously, our viewers are. Viewers on our show, your guys' shows, we've been following this the whole time. But the general public, they're generally confused right now. I've seen some people talk about they don't really understand Syria that well. It's harder to understand than something like Gaza. Gaza, you can see the genocide going on in real time on our cell phones. It's not hard to follow that accurately. In this case, I would say this is where I would start. If you were coming into this fresh right now, the best place to start to understanding what's happening is whatever side, and this is a general rule of thumb. You guys should know this by now. Whatever side the U.S. government and the Western media is on, whatever they're championing is the wrong side. So if this is supposed to be something to celebrate, this is the wrong thing to be celebrating. We should know this. This is every single time we are pushing the wrong side. So, and I know, and I'm saying this because I've seen some pro-Palestinian people get this wrong. And we have to tell them, no, this isn't leading to freeing Palestine. This is going in the other direction. One thing we also have to say, and I heard you say this earlier, Fiorella, and I kind of want to double down on the woke terrorist thing. It's kind of important because we have to look for these red flags in advance. When CNN brings Al-Jilani on to have a thoughtful discussion with a terrorist who beheads people, who is a number one enemy of the United States, bringing him on, I got to put this up, guys. I'm going to put this up for you to see. This is a screenshot, and I think it was Caitlin Johnson who shared this. We're talking about woke terrorist. This was actually in the heading of the CNN interview, just so you can see how ridiculous this is. So we should have seen this a mile away, which I mean, a lot of us did, but anybody watching this who happened to have CNN on at the time, look at this. Al-Jilani's he, him pronouns right there as we're having this discussion on CNN. This is setting the stage for, we're in a new place now. We understand that we have to be more empathetic. So when we're beheading people, we're going to do it with rainbow flags and BLM masks on. So we'll feel better about it. We know this trick. So we saw this long time ago, this is the guy that's supposed to be championing this right now. So I'll just leave it on this note. I'll pass it back to you guys on this just for maybe a final thought. But if anything, to see what Netanyahu is doing right now, bombing the crap out of Syria, and this apparent leader, in other words, if you believe that this guy had some sort of epiphany and he's now on the right side doing good work for the West, where is the pushback? Why are we not trying to stop these indiscriminate bombings? Why are they allowing it to happen? These are all red flags we should all be furious about. And more American people should be waking up to this. And I hope they are. I hope they're seeing this. Again, you don't have to be a scholar on this. You just have to recognize the red flags that have been there for a long time now. So we should have seen this coming. So yeah, I'll pass it back to you. That's my thought off the top of my head. But
I'm glad you're highlighting the issues with the mainstream media, because I think it is one of the biggest enemies of the people, because they are just all about propaganda. Because not only are they trying to reinvent, you know what I'm saying, or rehabilitate the terrorists that were on terrorist lists that are now taking over, they're still doubling down on the Assad is an evil dictator. And it is depressing to see people in the independent media kind of repeat that narrative. I mean, a couple people were eventually shown that, like they showed their true asses when they were saying, Assad is a brutal dictator, but without just and they're just repeating that CIA talking point, which allows them to go forth with this plan. Yeah, we understand that this was former Al-Qaeda members or former ISIS members and whatnot, but Bashar al-Assad was a brutal dictator. And you see that on CNN through every breath they can. Oh, after 20-something odd years of brutal dictatorships of Assad and his father, he is now fallen. So, I mean, this same type of propaganda is being played left and right. Fam, go right ahead.
Okay, well, I just want to read this. I'll read it from here because my thing is like a little bit off. I want you all to understand one thing. Like, there, as Pasta mentioned, there's a lot of people still saying that Assad is a brutal dictator. And I think that caveat is what allows us to have some sort of legitimate reason to destabilize Syria. And it's what's allowed this to happen. Even if you say, well, the terrorists are bad, when you continue to focus on Assad, it's the same thing that happens with Venezuela. And Venezuela is very worried right now. And I think they should be, because you're seeing this sort of come out when they really want somebody out. And this is, again, the last that they needed to get out before Iran, which is where we're going, especially if Donald Trump makes a deal with Russia. The theater, as I've been saying, is going to shift to Iran and China, because that's where all this is going, right? So I want to read something from you guys, for you guys, that Miss Bealey wrote, because I was actually in conversation with her when she had to leave. Now, she's not a person to draw attention to herself, but she had 6 dogs and cats. She had to leave the majority of her pets there because this happened at like 5 a.m. as everything started going awry. And imagine you having to leave. And this is played out times thousands, right? All the Syrian people that were there. But imagine this is your home. You're trying to live here forever. You're trying to get citizenship. You have no time to pick up your stuff and leave your animals because you can't take them anywhere. So I'm going to read something that you wrote just so we can get a sense of just how awful and devastating this is and how it happened. Because she said, after a rather turbulent 48 hours, I am safe and will be writing and broadcasting as normal very shortly. I had 1 hour to pack 1 suitcase, take 1 dog, and get through a border swarming with armed thugs, looting and fighting amongst themselves over the spoils. The night before was spent besieged by armed groups, firing in the air to celebrate their victory, while Israel started using bunk buster bombs on Syrian military sites and air defense close to the house. She's in Damascus, by the way. The house shook from top to bottom. At 10 a.m., truckloads of armed thieves arrived and battered at my front gate. I was on the phone to a friend who begged me to find a weapon. Clearly, I don't have any. I yelled at them from inside, and the dogs went crazy. After 3 batterings, they left. Much more to recount over the coming days. Social media is a mess of lies, misinformation, and downright hypocrisy. Thank you to everyone who emailed and messaged. It really lifted my spirits at an all-time low. I wrote this note this morning. I need a long time to process the loss for the whole world and for me as a human being who saw my future living in my beloved Syria. Anyone who can explain why Assad's pre-recorded farewell speech and possible explanation of the catastrophic events was not aired as planned after he left the country, please get in touch. So there was a speech that he made that was supposed to air, and it never aired, by the way. So I do have to point that out. So that is still a mystery why this speech never aired. She said, all the backstabbers who are now turning against Assad, protecting their interests, you were in a position to say something for 14 years. Why didn't you? So a lot of people all of a sudden saying, well, Assad, he did this and that. But where was this before? Why wasn't this said before? Why now all of a sudden that everybody and their mom is now saying, oh, Assad did this, Assad did that? Nobody's saying, by the way, that he's perfect and that he's not full of any blame, or there's no blame to be had for Syria itself. But why now are people choosing to now do this, right? Like dump more fuel on the fire.
Yep.
I don't blame any of the ordinary people for adopting the new era. People in Syria are isolated and afraid. Some are terrified. The mainstream media vultures are flooding in to claw at the corpse of one of the oldest civilizations in the world. History will be revised, as it always is, by the victor. If only the victor were genuinely Syrian and grassroots, not a terrorist force incubated in CIA black sites and empowered by Israel and the collective Western alliance of callous hegemony. Syria will become a toothless melting pot of foreign interests, resource looting, and expanding Zionist land grab. A nation without an army and without any military infrastructure is not a nation. It is a playing field for the predators. And so I had to read that because that's a firsthand account as to what happened and the chaos and everything that is going on. Again, I can't imagine, for example, if something happened and people, there was some sort of bombing here and Russia was attacked. I just try to put myself in that situation, having a home and having all of these things here. What would happen? You know what I mean? Like it's terrible. It's a terrible loss for the world. It's a terrible loss for the axis of resistance. It essentially sinks, as Pasta said, the axis of resistance, as you said, Matt, as well. And we really have to reevaluate what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it, because I really do think this was a wake-up call for many people who have had rose-colored glasses on about relying on China or Russia or all of this, or just putting a lot of burdens on these countries that are basically just trying to survive and trying to do what they can for their own people, and really reevaluate how they're looking at all of this. Because if Syria can fall this quickly. And just all of this coming from Israel, which was pretty much in the dirt, pretty much done, and just Israel just comes in and is taking all of Syria. I mean, it's expanded into so much of it, taking everything that it wants with little to no opposition at this point now. And with Assad completely out of the country, with the Syrian people just completely enveloped by terrorists, and with the United States rebranding terrorists once again, and so many following this and falling for it again, as Matt mentioned, the Palestinians who support the Syrian free moderate rebels, the terrorists that are saying, great, yay, now what's going to happen? Yay, let's free Palestine. No, I'm sorry, Palestine will not be free because there's a bunch of terrorists and they're allowing Israel to do what it wants. In fact, now Gaza and Palestine are doomed because there's the Hezbollah can't defend them, and we can't rely on Iran unless Iran miraculously does something. Which, by the way, I've been done, but I'm double done believing politicians are playing 5D chess and that they have some sort of ulterior move, because I was done with that during Bernie. So after Bernie, I was like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to buy that sort of
the
mindset
truthers
anymore.
Are right, fam. They're just going to, it's one world government. They're working together. They're going to get us all on the grid, track and trace all over the place. I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm starting to believe a lot of their rhetoric. And let's also mention too, as well, you said Gaza's gone, Palestine's gone, right? Hezbollah's gone. And I mean, Hezbollah might exist in Iran, but as far as Hezbollah in Lebanon, they're cut off. They're cut off. Yeah. They're not going to be able to get the weapons they need to continue the fight. So, I mean, this just spells crap across the board. And like I said, for us, who spend a lot of time in Latin America, it makes us double done too as well. It makes me nervous now because I'm looking at Venezuela. I'm looking at Nicaragua. I'm looking at Cuba, right?
Yeah.
What's to come? Final words, Matt. Put a bow on it. Let's get to the next section.
I'll say
2 hours.
I'll throw this hypothetical at, because we hear Netanyahu. I'm back to the Netanyahu speech, because he gets on camera. He's always saying we mission accomplished BS. He does it every time there's a new territory taken. I'm wondering, guys, what do you think would happen if the next time Netanyahu gets on camera, he just says it out loud? What if he just says the plan for greater Israel is succeeding? what would change? Why not just say it at this point? It's so freaking obvious that each one of these accomplishments, as he calls it, is just another step in that direction of taking the entire area that he's been wanting the whole time. No more excuses. No more, we're just waiting to get the hostages back. No more, they're using civilians as human shields. No more of that. Just say it. I don't see the Western media even remotely getting like, maybe that's a little too much there. No, they would just go along with it. Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. Why not just do it?
Yeah. Fam, do you want to take
Well,
that? Because he's not going to get pushback here in the United States, by the way.
Yeah.
There's no pushback. Our beautiful, beautiful Israel. And they're not. These people have tribal mentality.
Yep.
They hero worship Donald Trump. The majority of the populist right is going to go along with it.
There, Smotrich, I believe, has said it, right? I believe that he has talked about the greater Israel. I believe they've actually talked about it, but I mean, I don't think Netanyahu himself has said it, but I mean, everybody knows that that's exactly what's happening. This is it. I mean, Iran is next. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope we're all wrong.
Yeah.
I hope that, I don't think I've ever hoped to be more wrong in my life as I am now. I mean, I hope that there's a miracle that Iran does something and that, they coordinate well with somebody else and that Russia and all these people come together and defeat the evil empire. But that's not what I see happening. I see the normalization of relationships. People might say, well, at least that's avoiding nuclear war. It's kicking it down the line is what it's doing. You're basically just kicking the inevitable down the line because there's going to be some sort of war. We're already in a sort of global war that's connected, but not directly. So we have everything that happened in Syria is directly connected to everything that's happening in Russia, Ukraine, what's happening with China, it's all connected. But it's just not outright officially a World War III scenario, but it is all connected. So I think what we're going to be seeing from here on out is a ceasefire negotiation between the Trump administration and Russia. And that should tell you everything you need to know. I think we're going to be seeing Iran trying to normalize relationships, Syria get the sanctions taken off because they will only take off the sanctions now that Bashar al-Assad is out and they have control over the country and its oil. And you're going to see the Donald Trump administration come in, do what they can to Iran. Iran will fold, and that'll be the end of it. The entirety of Palestine will basically be Israel's. They'll maybe give some sort of, symbolic BS via the UN, an institution that is completely in line with the West and NATO. It's there for show. And Latin America is going to be on the radar because of the fourth industrial revolution and everything we've been talking about, not just with the lithium, but with the other minerals that the West and NATO want. And eventually what will happen is they will try to get to Russia via these other states, via Georgia, via Moldova, via the Balkans area, like they've been trying to do for decades. And eventually they will attempt to go after Russia again. And as long as Russia leaves some sort of avenue, right? If they fold without getting all of the security guarantees that they need, it's going to come back. And then eventually it will be a war with China, because China has also, and Nico put it out today, by the way, has been standing aside and being very much like, we need diplomacy, we need to talk, we need this and that. But they haven't. Have they actually, put themselves out there? No. For anybody? No, they haven't. They've been investing economically. But again, they too are not acting ideologically. You want to say that China is a communist country, you want to say all these things, but really, are they really acting ideologically? No, they're acting for their economic interests.
The last question I'm going to pose to you guys, because it's a tough question. Friends of ours, friends of the shows like Dan Cohen, who have been very critical of certain people from the populist right making statements against the state of Israel, being a little bit anti-Semitic. People like Jake Shields, Stu Peters, Myron Gaines from the Fresh and Fit podcast, a guy by the name of Sneeko, who a lot of people wouldn't know, who just had this kind of like this legendary battle on election night with Rabbi Shmuley in the streets of Florida, Dan Blanzarian. Is there something that, I mean, because to me, it's like, okay, sometimes what they say, especially like a guy like Stu Peters, right? Where that could be, man, I think you're being a little anti-Semitic there. You got to say the word anti-Zionist. You know what I'm saying? Is there something to what they are saying, being one of the only voices, some of the only voices on the populist right to push back against the Zionist nation? Is there something which we have to say, hey, man, maybe we should take the what's the word I'm looking for? The blinders off of sorts, the governor, right? That doesn't let you go too fast. Is there something to be said about those people who are at least speaking out against the Zionist nation? You know what I'm saying? When these guys speak up, I know what Dan Cohen is saying, and I know Stu Peters would be the best example of this. You know what I'm saying? But isn't there some merit to what they're saying about? Because they also point out what the Zionist nation is doing and how they have no benefit for people in America. If anybody wants to take a shot at that, that's the last statement I have. And I'm curious to see what people in the audience have to say about that situation too as well. Because like I said, go ahead, fam. Sorry.
I'm confused. And I'll let Matt go in a second. What do you mean? Is there something to it? Do you mean is what they're saying is true about
the way they are
the
saying
quote
it
unquote
can be
Jews?
looked at as being really anti-Semitic, like Stu Peters, right?
Uh-huh.
Like,
well, so here's the thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to get clarity on what you were saying.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, where we're at right now, if you can point it out, you can point out how Israel and the Zionist entity and all this stuff is legitimately a problem. You can point out you can even say, Jews in the US are some of the most, I would say, privileged people. You can talk about all of that, and no matter what you say, it's going to be perceived as anti-Semitic. But the way Stu Peters puts it doesn't do us any favors, because right now we're already, like, the Palestinian movement and the Palestinian resistance forces and the axis of resistance, all these people have already been defending themselves against even remotely talking about Zionism. So when they do that, what happens is they don't hear anything else, and they essentially make you out to be a bigot, whether you are or not. On the other hand, I do think there are people who are actually who actually genuinely believe that it's just them that are the problem. And if we eliminate them, everything will be fine. And I think that's wrong, because I think that it's more than that. I think that that's a huge element. But I think if you just make it all about an ethnic group, then you're doing the same thing. You're doing the same thing like that the other side is doing. And I think that it's worth pointing out that we can't talk about it. It's worth pointing out that we are completely vilified when we even mention anything about Zionism and how there's no differentiation. But I think if you're going to have somebody talk about it, I don't think it helps, actually. I think it actually makes our case much more difficult, because you will have the Nazis exist. They literally exist, and they don't like not just them, not just Jews, but they don't like anybody else that's not like them. So it's to me, it's more than that. It's not about just Zionism or Nazism or whatever ism, like fundamentalist Christians or the Wahhabist caliphate terrorists. All of these groups have one thing in common, that they believe themselves to be better than everybody else, that they believe themselves to have the right by God that makes them better than everybody else. So for me, you could take the same thing about all these groups. Now, the one thing is true in the West is how much power the Zionists have in the United States. And that is undeniable. And it's not just in the United States, it's throughout Europe. And even, you could even say, even out to Russia, you could talk about how that is a massive thing. So this is why that lends itself to people focusing on it, because they're like, wait a minute, so they're all taking over the world. They are doing this, they are doing that. But I think if we get stuck on that, we're not going to get to beyond that, which is you have a lot of people who are completely atheists who are doing a lot of evil, just as you have a lot of people who are Christian who are doing a lot of evil. And yes, the power may be in this vacuum, to a certain degree. But I think if we get stuck on fighting these sort of things, we're just never going to actually go after those in power, you know? So I think it's a fine line. I don't know. Like I believe that they say some of these things that are true, but it's how they say it that it's just going to push people away. That's just my
It's
personal
borderline
opinion.
cryptic too sometimes. Like, you know, when I heard
Yeah, it's very
Dan Cohen
cryptic,
say these
actually.
things, I had to go back and look at him like, you know, I can kind of see your point over there. You know, especially when, you know, Stu Peters goes on, he goes on Alex Jones shows and he says a lot of things that are true. Dan Blazerian, you know what I'm saying? I think Sneeko, and obviously these guys, you probably don't know who Sneeko is. You might know him, you might not know him. I mean, and Myron Gaines, these guys have these podcasts where they bring on women and they talk about dating. And it really, to me, I think I can't stand it. But now the fact that they are so looked upon, that Rogan-esque kind of like effect where it's kind of bringing in this kind of like mainstream what's going on in our regular lives into politics, and it's kind of morphing there where they do have a lot of ears on them. I appreciate them doing that, but it is just something that it's kind of very curious to how it's said. And then, you know, it's tough because there's a lot of truth in what they say. A lot of times it's just that, you know, those commonalities. I mean, Ryan Dawson was doing a show and he was using the Jews. What about this? Jews. Like he was saying that. And I was like, I think that's going to be counterproductive to what we're trying to get across over here. Matt, go ahead, buddy. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm going to take a more of a silver lining approach here because I agree with both you guys are saying, but at the same time, I'll say this. If they weren't doing that, we would be the extremists right now. So there's something about you have these louder voices. They're not necessarily choosing their words appropriately. We like to be more careful with our words because we're making very bold statements when we talk about Zionism, but we make sure to kind of prepare what we're going to say before we go live, and we don't just run our mouth. So we're very good at that. These guys, they go a little more raw. They go a little more off the cuff. And like those examples you said, Craig, I agree. They think some of them are a little cringy. But the point is, when they do that, we're all going to get finger pointed. We're all going to get called anti-Semitic. They love throwing that at everybody that's challenging anything to do with Israel and anything to do with some sort of corruption in any of our industries. We talk about corruption in media, corruption in DC, corruption right here in Hollywood, corruption in the education system. We're living in a time where we can actually have these conversations now. I think this is great that we can talk like this now, because you go back 10 years, 20 years, we couldn't even discuss this. We weren't even allowed to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? What's going on in DC? What's going on in Hollywood? Why are there, it seems like everybody's captured and we're not allowed to have any critique here. We can do this now. So I don't actually mind it. I think it's fine. They can do what they want in their way and they can get attacked. And that's fine. Yeah. We have a lane open for ourselves to have thoughtful conversations. So I'm okay with it. I think we all need to get a little more aware and a little more suspicious. And I think that in general, just the world in general, being a little bit more critical, having the critical thinking mask, helmets on, taking off the goggles and looking at, wait a minute, what is not being said? What wasn't told to us back in high school, regarding, American history and world history? What's that? What did we not learn about World War II? What did we not learn? And so these are questions I think are great that we're having now. So yeah, however you want to present, that's your choice. Stu Peters, he can do what he wants. That's his choice. But I don't think it's that bad, because it gives us a chance to really be taken seriously and people to be listening and have these conversations. And then they can have conversations with their friends, families, and colleagues too at the dinner table. And we can start moving forward as a society and calling out corruption when we see it.
That's why Matt loves to put out the silver lining. That's why I love you, buddy. You just, you're like the Garland Nixon of the homeless left. You really are. Garland always says, let's find the positive there and the negatives there. You know what I'm saying? And
sometimes there are no positives, so I have to be the one to point that out. You know me.
Not according to Garland. You're a little bit different than Garland. You're very few times the positives will outweigh the negatives when Sam looks at a lot of things. Let's not kid ourselves. But that's why we love you. And there's many times you have these "I told you so" moments. We're not going to get into that. RFK. Let's not talk about that now live on the air. But yes, you did tell me so. And the Libertarian Party, man, what pie on my face for that shit. But I'm, listen, at the end of the day, I love Derek Bros. I love my friend Steve, right? And, they believe in just creating parallel societies and opting out of what's going on. But it's like I say, and this is something that Gloria, our good friend Gloria Gio, would agree with us. And if you haven't seen the LOLs with her and Jeremy, please go check them out. They're on the Pasta to Go YouTube channel. The power structure must change for anything to change. We can't just go and try to do our own thing and think they're going to allow us to exist. They need to be taken out. We need to identify who they actually are and take them out before we can go on with our lives. And I also want to point out that Friendly Brilliant, we love you. She mentioned that a lot of her Jewish friends are anti-Zionist. I mean, I think that's something we can be really proud of. There's a lot of Jewish people in the United States who've been on the forefront, been leading the charge to say, no, not in my name. The Zionist nation should go. It doesn't have a right to exist. They've been saying that themselves, and I commend them for doing so. So that is it for this section, an hour and 20 minutes. When it was supposed to be 30 minutes. That's good. But that's what you get when you got a lot of intellectual people in one particular podcast. And there's only 3 of us. Can you imagine if there was a 4th? Oh my Lord. Forget about it. Let's get to the next topic. I know you guys want to talk about. Did you have anything highlighted that you want to bring up, Jayme, before we move along? Any other? I love you guys too. We love you too. Fam, I have a book here for Ruth that she signed for you that you need to get when you come to town.
You need to bring it to where we're going next.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah. Can we talk about that? Yeah.
No, probably not.
All right.
Later.
Yeah. Okay. It's just in case we get stopped again, right? Well, we get the kibosh again. We don't end up on our next trip and stuff like that. And I want to thank everybody for all the people in my networks too as well. Fam, Matt, Gloria Gillo, obviously Jeremy Kuzmarov, all the people who held it down while I'm going through this hard times with my mom. I kind of told a lot of people I was took off for about a month. My mom had a stroke, and I'm aiding her here in Florida. Now, I can tell you this much. One of my biggest battles and me screaming on the phone and taking up a lot of time has been with the insurance companies. And one of my last comments to Humana, which my mom opted into private insurance instead of getting Medicare with a supplemental insurance, she took a cheaper policy called a Humana Advantage plan, which means you're opting into private insurance, and they make a decision on your claims or not. And as we know, we've known this for quite some time. And if you ever seen the movie The Rainmaker with Danny DeVito and what's his name, Matt Damon, they get to a whistleblower in a room, and she says, well, the object, what we do over here in the insurance company is we deny all claims. And that's what they do. Humana, with this Advantage plan, Humana would say, oh, we'll give you $30 a month on groceries. We'll give you $10 copays. We'll give you cheap generic drugs for hardly any of the price. We'll deliver them to your door. They give you all these things. But when you get into the hospital, and this is from speaking to countless caseworkers, guys, people who work in the hospitals that are caseworkers assigned to patients to make sure they get where they need to get, they'll tell you, Humana is great when you're out there, but as soon as you get in here, you are doomed. And it took 3 weeks to get my mom out of the hospital into a subacute. I didn't even get her into an acute rehab. She had a stroke on the left side of her brain. Her communication skills are out of whack. She still hasn't spoken. She's mumbling a lot, and she's trying to speak. I don't even know if it's sad. It's been a month, and I don't even know if my mom knows that she had a stroke yet, right? I still think that she hears stuff and she says stuff, but it doesn't come out right because the wiring is all messed up in her brain. Now, if anybody looks into stroke, right, you'll see that as soon as the best thing you can do for a stroke victim is to get them into rehab as quickly as possible. Am I right, Matt? This is something that Leslie had talked about. Yep. You get them into rehab as quickly as possible. Well, they denied my mom's claim to get her into Pinecrest. The facility, which has acute therapy, accepted her. They had a bed waiting her, but Humana said no. Then I appealed it, and they had up to 5 days to get an answer. On the 5th day of Christmas, when they were supposed to give me an answer, they somehow canceled that appeal and extended it another 5 days without any. To this day, they still have not given me an answer. So this is precious time that my mom is laying in a hospital bed in a hospital gown, not putting on her regular clothes, not getting up, not sitting at a table eating, staying in her bed, catheters hooked up to her, precious fucking time, and they didn't give a damn. One of the last comments I said to them on the phone was, and this is, I'm talking one day, on the day that they were supposed to give me an answer on the appeal, and they kicked it 5 days. I spent 4.5 hours on the phone. I would leave my mom's room, go out into the hallway. I called at my office. There was a little chair in there. I told the lady, after getting 4 different answers in getting this one manager on the phone. Finally, not speaking to Bangladesh. I was on freaking talking to people in Bangladesh, right? In the complaint department. I said, I hope that you suffer, the person who made this decision. Tell your boss, whoever made this decision, because I know it's not you, lady. I hope whoever made this decision suffers the same type of stroke as my mom did and is left for dead the way you are leaving my mom for dead. And I hung up the phone. So I understand and I know what it feels like, which brings us to our next section, right? Which we have to talk about this thing. I know Jayme CheeseSlice has had enough, our engineer. Was the CEO killer caught, or is Luigi Mangione, he's my third cousin, is he being framed as a patsy? And that's the question to ask right now. So much information has come out. We were able to cover this on the Homeless Left last week after it happened on the bullets, right? Deny, defend, and whatever it says. It was about a book that was talked about what the health insurance agencies do. They just deny your claims. They make money off the death of people, really denying their claims. I think it's like some close to 70,000 people every year die because they don't their claims are denied. United Health is one of the highest in when their denial claims. Almost 35% of their claims have been denied. So I'm going to kick this to you guys right off the bat. What do you guys think so much? I mean, we do have a first of all, let's bring up the first part. The first thing I got up there. Go ahead, Jayme. You can bring it on up. This is comedian Bill Burr. You can play this video real quick on what he says, because this really, in a nutshell, talks about how people are perceiving this, because I want us to first reflect on those who are cheering this on and those who are acting like this is the worst thing in the world. Obviously, the shit lib cucks. Oh, my God. How could this happen? You know what I'm saying? I'm not advocating for violence, but go ahead, fam.
I just want to say something before you play it. So just so people know, I don't know if you've shown this before, but the CEO was shot outside of a hotel room, right? When he came out of a building of a meeting he had, by this man, Luigi, which he has the most Italian name ever. He probably is Pasta's cousin. And they've only recognized him from his eyebrows, because he was wearing like a mask and he was covered. So the whole thing is, people are wondering, is this the right guy or not? Okay. But a lot of people were cheering when this happened online. And as this guy is going to tell you, the media is not happy about that. And who was one of those people cheering that this happened? You could all probably guess that I was trolling some people. But yeah. Okay, that's all.
All right, let's play this video and then we'll get into it. Matt, we'll give you the first comments on Mr. Bill Burr and what he says. This is Bill Burr, and he's making a comment on the way the media perceive this whole situation.
You know what's annoying me about this kid who killed this CEO is none of these news programs are talking about the incredible lack of empathy from the general public about this because of how these insurance companies treat people when they are at their most vulnerable, after we've all given them our money every fucking month, and now we finally need you, and all you do is deny us. And then these pussies and all of these things are taking the pictures of their CEOs off their websites. You know, I got to be honest with you, okay? I love that fucking CEOs are fucking afraid right now. You should be. By and large, you're all a bunch of selfish, greedy fucking pieces of shit, and a lot of you are mass murderers. You just don't pull the trigger. That's why it looks clean. That's why these people look, oh my God, oh, he was just, walking into a hotel. It's like, okay, but what was his job? What did he do? What was the results of it? You know what's annoying me about this kid who killed this?
By the way, so Matt, before you get going, what he's also alluding to as well, and I think a lot of people are happy that these CEOs are scared. The CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield, who had just made an announcement that they weren't going to pay for the anesthesia, the full amount of anesthesia. They backtracked on their comments after her picture was up on Twitter, and they said, "Oh, we're not going to do that. Let's get out of this right away." Your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, that in a way we could say this is a certain type of activism, because already from the moment this is 6 days ago, the shooting occurred. You had the day before that, I think you're mentioning about the anesthesia. being by Blue Shield being taken away, the payments for people that should have that. You should be able to have anesthesia when you go into surgery. They had to renege that the next day after the shooting. So already we're seeing some changes in the right, some incremental changes happening from this one incident. So yes, we are celebrating that. We're celebrating that Blue Shield had to renege that. That's awesome. All these CEOs that are scared right now, they should be scared. Are we saying, yay, a family lost their father, daughter, mother, whatever, or the daughter's whatever, father, wife's husband? That's not the part that we're talking about. That's the part they want to pretend that we're celebrating. No, we're talking about a guy who got a lot of money, made billions of dollars off of other people dying. The more people that died, the more money he made. This is the point. This is what we're talking about. Bill Burr is 100% on point, right on. He usually is on these things. So I'm really glad you played that clip. I want to put this up real quick because you mentioned this earlier, Craig, about the company itself was notorious for not allowing people to have claims. They denied more claims than any other top company by far. So this chart will show that. It's getting
Humana
right
wasn't
now.
on that chart, so I wonder where they probably don't have the data from Humana, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we don't have we have the big ones up here. You have Kaiser at the top with only 7% denial rates. United Healthcare is the worst one of everyone on this list, 32%. As you can see, that is double the industry average of insurance claims being denied. So he was making money off of this 32% of denying people, and we all know what that leads to: death. Period. There's no your personal story, Craig. You shared up front. Everybody that has a personal story like that, we can all relate to that. We are all dealing with something like this, especially right now when we're seeing all of the heart problems and strokes, and we're seeing so many neurological problems. People are having excess problems right now around the globe, especially in this country. We don't know why, but it seems to have a major uptick in the last 3 years. Yeah. So for this to happen now, it's not a coincidence that people are at their end point. They're at their breaking point. This is the movie John Q. We cheered Denzel on in the movie John Q. as he's had enough. He's a father, a husband. He's had enough, and he goes into the hospital to make a statement. You are denying healthcare. For my family's going to die and I need to do something about it. And we're on his side. So if we're not on the side of the people right now, you have to look yourself in the mirror right now and say, what is wrong with you? You're taking this mainstream media narrative and you're saying, yes, let's go after the shooter. Let's get the shooter. Okay, well, you have him now. We'll talk about that in a second.
Alleged.
We'll talk about whether Luigi is the right guy or not. But before that, it's very, very important that we understand that New York City itself right now has over 30,000 unsolved homicide cases right now. 30,000. So the first question we should be asking in the last 6 days, why was this case the most important one for them to solve? Let's get the shooter. Because
it's one of them.
Yeah.
Because it's one of them.
Because it's one of them. Exactly.
68,000 people a year die from no health insurance. No one cares because it's all part of the plan. But one little CEO gets shot and everybody loses their mind.
Yeah.
This is why I don't hate
that
the
was
Joker,
not a good imitation of the Joker right there, please.
So. You gotta work
whatever, fam. My imitation of the Joker is better than your imitation of Marissa Tomei. But the best imitation out there we could talk about, and we showed, okay, so that's a lot of people go, yeah, and it's so ironic to me that this happened as I'm going through the same thing. It's been a crazy fucking year for me, people. And as I'm sitting there, I'm literally crying, right? Like, not just because what happened to my mom and the situation, but the fact that I was stuck right in this time where I'm desperately just trying to get my mom out of the hospital, desperately trying to get her into a facility, and I can't get it done because the insurance is saying no. And I'm witnesses at the same time. And then we watch people like Bill Burr, what he said. We have a lot of our friends, right? RBN. We know how they feel about this whole situation, right? But just like we we watched this whole situation, the tribal mentality comes in here. And it was people like the Cranstonsteins, I think his name is Aaron Rapar, and our good friend over there, get this one ready to put up there, Jayme, Crystal Ball, right? Crystal Ball. What do? They make this a right versus left fucking paradigm. Disgusting. Jayme, get on up. Check this out. Crystal Ball. I'm not going to do an imitation of her because she's an idiot. Plot twist. The United Healthcare CEO killer was apparently a right-wing fan of Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, Theo Huberman, and other right adjacent personalities. Let me just be politically correct in saying this to Crystal Ball. Go fuck yourself, lady. You piece of human trash. Go fuck yourself. The fact that you're making, I mean, you're supposed to be Medicare for all person, and you're putting this shit up here. You're playing tribal politics. You're buying in and feeding the divide and conquer situation. I mean, this is something where a lot of people on the right and the left were
Plasta.
like, good.
Yeah. I just want to say she has to do that because she's extremely wealthy. This is what I mean. Like, this is when something like this happens, it's very obvious who defends who, right? You have the entire police force of New York trying to figure out, and in Pennsylvania, trying to figure out who this guy is, completely putting everything down, trying to find who this guy is. And then you have all of the people that are part of the professional managerial class and the people that have a lot of money defending it and saying, how dare you cheer for this? You have I forget, Li Fang. You had him have a whole meltdown because people are cheering for this, and people are cheering because the United States is losing its entire reason that it's been popular around the world. It's in decline right now, and everybody knows it. And you have people like you, and not just you. We have a massive we're not probably going to talk about it now, but we have this massive thing happening where everybody's getting cancer left and right. And we can talk about the many reasons why that's happening, but everybody's getting cancer and everybody's having to deal with insurance companies, and everybody is trying to survive in the US right now amidst the fact that our country is giving billions of dollars to Israel and to Ukraine. And you have a homeless population that is completely just left out. You have drug addicted, drug infested cities, and the entire rest of the world's wondering, like, why does the best country in the world, why can't they get their shit together? All the time people ask me, like, I don't understand, why does the government not step in and help these people? Why do they allow this to happen? They can't understand it, and neither can I when I try to explain that we don't have health insurance, and if you have health insurance, you have to pay these high premiums, and they don't always cover everything, and you have to fight with them to try. It's like with your cable bill, if the internet, if it's not working, you have to call them to get it to work again, and then they're like, oh, it's working fine. And then, a week later, it's not working. You have to call to get them to get it to work. And it's this whole thing, but it's with your health and it's with your family members. I mean, I've had stories. I mean, when my mom had breast cancer, she had to go to a completely different state to get treated. And it's just insanity, the things we have to do that people here in Russia don't understand, because they have healthcare provided by their employer or by the state. And there was a tweet thread I saw about Cuba and how this foreigner, or this American actually,
Where I'm going,
went to Cuba and got treated, and it was fine and it was normal. And you can talk about Cuba's poverty and all the things, the sanctions that they're facing and all the things you want to talk about. But when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to medicine, Cuba is one of the best places there. And they have been doing a lot of research into cancer, by the way. And so we're seeing our friend Shonda have to raise money and raise funds for her treatment. We're all banding together to help her out because the woman is fighting cancer. Is that normal? It's not normal, but for us, it's become normal because we don't have any help. And we've been talking about healthcare and Medicare for all for almost 9 years now, Pasta. I mean, I mean, this is insane. Nothing has changed. Things have gotten worse. When we had this Medicare for all thing in DC during the 2020, right as the January 6th stuff was about to happen, we had people come in with their bills taped all over their body, showing us how in depth they were. So when one little CEO who is indirectly guilty of killing so many people or sending people to their death gets killed because somebody's had enough, I'm sorry, I'm not going to cry about it. I'm going to say maybe this will put something in their asses so the people in power can start trembling. Because when the people in power tremble, that's when you know you're getting something done. The guy could have attacked and shot up an entire place, where a hospital. He could have done something stupid like that. No, he went to the CEO and he did that. So to me, that says a lot about power, understanding power. If nothing is working, all these protests, Biden promises this, Republicans promise that, they sit on their asses, they don't do anything for the American people. Well, what's it going to take? People are going to do the extreme thing. And you can boast about it and you can say you're morally superior and you're against it. But at the end of the day, the average working person, left, right, whatever, was actually laughing about it and saying, finally, somebody does something.
And fam, you said indirectly. People would argue that. He's the top of the freaking chain. You can even say he's directly involved with killing so many people. And let me also say this too as well with the turbo cancers. I'm going to add, Matt can share his story if he wants, but I'm going to share my story too as well. My mom got 2 shots, one Moderna, one Pfizer. I begged her not to get it. She got it anyways because her doctor told her to. Ever since then, she's been having more problems with her AFib, her heart. It wasn't a hemorrhage stroke that she had. It was a blood clot. All these things increased. All these problems with the AFib increased after she got the shot. You take what you want of it, people, but there's a lot of people out there with blood clots. Go ahead, Matt.
No, it's true. I mean, we're seeing the rise of cancer, rapid cancer, people that were in remission years ago. It's coming back now, right and left, everywhere you look. I mean, you guys know my personal story, my father-in-law and the massive blood clotting. The fact that he's still alive is insane. It's having the top-notch care you could possibly have barely comes through. We have the pictures. I don't have them with you, but these are the blood clotting. No one's ever seen anything like this. The doctors have never seen anything like this before. The massiveness of these clots, the fact that anyone can survive this is a miracle. And yet they're still asking people, are you up to date on your COVID shots? So we know. We've been on this thing for the last 3-4 years. We know this, that the medical industry is corrupt. The doctors are taking bribes and they don't care. They don't lose any sleep over it. How much money can go in their pocket? And that's how it's been. So that's why we can see this very clearly, that a CEO like Brian Thompson makes his millions and billions and millions of dollars off of killing people. It's direct. Yes, absolutely. It's direct. It's how many people can I deny so I can get my bonuses? That's it. So when we look at the killer, okay, so they caught him. Are we ready to talk about this guy? Because
here's my first question to you guys. Let's get this out of here. Okay, so Indy is in the chat. Indy, if you want to come show your face, I'll give you a link right now. You can come on again. If you show your face, I'll give you a link right effing now, my man. I won't even say your name, but if you want to do that, I'll give you a link to come on right now and tell me. Fam, Matt, we'll start with you, Fee. For what reason could you think this would be a psyop of sorts? Because that's what people are saying. I've seen stuff saying that Nancy Pelosi was at the top of this. He wasn't set to testify against anything. He wasn't, being criminally charged. There was a civil lawsuit that said there was inside trader going on. But we all know everybody inside trades over here. The whole freaking Congress is being inside trades. So, why can you think of a reason, or maybe you can explain it to me, would this be a psyop? I mean, is it all about distraction porn that everybody's going to be consumed with this story over the holidays rather than look into what's really going on in Syria or looking to what's going on elsewhere? Help me out, fam. If you have a theory, and Matt, you guys have a theory on why this would be a psyop, because as we get into Luigi's family made a lot of money in nursing homes, right? But I would think that he would see a lot of people ending up in those nursing homes because they got denied in claims, and he could see them get killed, and that's what would radicalize him. So, I mean, our friend Gloria out there, fam, is saying, "Oh, this is CIA. This is an op again." You know how she is. We love her, and a lot of people feel that way. But why would this be an op? And if anybody can explain this to me and they think this is an op and not a guy who's just taking vengeance for what he's seen in his life, please explain. Fam, you want to take a stab at this and help me out? Please enlighten me, educate me.
So I think people are calling it a psyop for different reasons. I think there's some people that, like you said, think that he was set up, like he was asked to go kill this guy for some reason. And then there are people that are calling this a psyop in the sense of this isn't the guy that did it. So there's like different reasons why people are calling it a psyop. I actually think that this CEO was killed for a specific reason. We just don't know exactly why that reason is, because any of them could have been killed. Maybe he specifically picked him for the specific reason statistically as to what he did the most, and we don't know if this is the actual guy. So for us to answer that question, we need to be sure that this is the actual guy, and we don't really know exactly why that is. Now, what this does is highlight how people are angry about the health insurance issue and how people are fed up with that in social media. But the mainstream media is not talking about it. The mainstream media is completely ignoring it and pretending that, this isn't a thing, this is awful, blah blah blah. But everybody else and normal people, not even political people, are like, yeah, this is great. Like, so it doesn't really benefit the status quo. It's not really benefiting the establishment, in my opinion, that this happened, because all it's doing is highlighting just how upset people are. Now, what they could do after this is make it impossible for people to question health insurance policymakers and CEOs and all of that, which I think they will do. Like, they've already started taking off the pictures and completely protecting these people. But because of that, because it doesn't really help them, in my opinion, I don't think it was done as a sort of like CIA operation, because there's no benefit for them to this. I'm not, unless I'm missing something, I'm not really seeing how this benefits them whatsoever. I mean, other than they're just going to use it as an excuse to continue to empower those and protect those in power. It exposes actually how they protect those in power. It exposes how people are upset and angry and fed up with the status quo, especially related to healthcare. It exposes the mainstream media as an arm of the very powerful, to those that still aren't aware, because healthcare is something that affects everybody, not just our echo chamber on X or on YouTube, on Rumble, and all of the different political variations. It affects everybody. This isn't a left or right issue. This is a human issue. This is an issue that Americans, everyday Americans, are dealing with. So this is not something that they want exposed. I think this was a person that was angry at the system and saw something that affected them directly, because you don't go and kill someone unless it affected you directly. So for me, I think that is genuine. What I don't know is genuine is if this is the guy who actually did it. That's what I'm not sure of.
Well, you can see that little part. My grandfather, if he were alive, was racist bastard. Most Italians were. Like, he'd say, shave in between your eyes over there. You got a unibrow. You look like a greaseball with that thing over there. The pictures of the guy in the mask, he had a clear space in there. Right now, this guy's got a unibrow. Matt, your thoughts?
So I think that our approach to be suspicious this is a natural thing to do. And we have to do this every time. So I'm not going to say it's not him. It might be him. It might be the guy. But there are red flags. So we have to look at that and say, well, why is it that he's, 5 days later, he's caught in a McDonald's? Why is he eating in a McDonald's? I guess one of the employees turned him in. Why does he have the manifesto on his body at that time? What was he doing for those 5 days? Very strange. What else? That you mentioned the unibrow situation, the shift from what we saw on the footage, the surveillance footage to being caught 5 days later. That's an awful short time to grow your hair back. On top of that, I would look at the big tech situation, because you go into, so that it's very easy to go into anybody's account and mess with it. So what we saw on his Twitter account, he had 500 followers 6 days ago. It immediately jumped up to 100,000 followers in the next 24 to 48 hours. Now the account is gone. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. His YouTube account is gone. So we know why and we know how they can go in and they can do whatever they want. What I'm more interested in is what is on, what was the last stuff posted? I guess there's this other platform he was on. I don't have the name of it in front of me, but he was posting these vague things about everything's going to be done. Something's going to happen. There's very vague. And there was also a mention of December 11th, which we're not even at yet. So there's a lot of vague stuff there. The guy had disappeared for like 3 months or something. There's a lot of vagueness there. So I'm like, well, and what's in this manifesto itself? One of the key sentences, I got it right here, says, this is what was written on his person when they got him at the McDonald's. These parasites had it coming. I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done. To me, again, it sounds very vague. Like, what's the specific target of Brian Thompson, this particular CEO? Do you have anything to say about him? I like, Fee, what you mentioned about he didn't just go and, annihilate a hospital waiting room or go into a back and kill a bunch of nurses. He specifically targeted this guy. Where is that in the manifesto? So a lot of these questions are unanswered. And then we have this mask situation too. People are talking about the high-tech ability of masks today. You can look like anybody you want. So how do we even know who was the actual face behind this hood from that surveillance footage? So these are all healthy questions to ask. As you guys both mentioned, the media is not covering this. We have to do the work for them because they don't want to do this stuff. So we have to do it. And I think these are healthy discussions to have. We're not saying definite one way or the other. But again, these are red flags. So let's go through the process and figure this out together.
I think we do have somebody waiting in the wings. We can maybe get his opinions. I'm against bringing him on because I love him. But, the fact that he won't show his handsome face. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the creator, the CEO, the owner, the man who does so much legwork for people in the independent media space. Indie Left News is joining us to the show, or Indie Media Today, or Get Indie News. I remember when you started off just showing the 5 best videos of the day, and you were doing it in the morning and the night. You've been working so hard for so long, man. Thank you for joining the show, brother.
Oh, dude, thank you. I love you. Honored to be on the show. Love it. Thank you. Appreciate being invited. Yeah, I got a lot to say about this because this feels a lot like an out. I don't think this guy did it. He has no reason to want to do it. And you could look at all this ancillary stuff. He sees stuff through his family, but this guy was set up to be an heir. This guy had been doing all the right things to set up his career to be a leader and an executive himself. He was living in Hawaii, living his best life, chilling, eating mushrooms and chilling out on the beach. All of a sudden, this guy disappears, and then a picture, there's a lot of weird stuff. There's the fact that an employee overheard him saying, well, I look like the guy in New York. And then all of a sudden he has all this stuff on him. I saw the movie Minority Report, and they talk, and Colin Farrell is the investigator, and he says, this looks like an orgy of evidence. And you know how many cases I've ever been at where there was an orgy of evidence? None. And all of this, and Snow Himbo made a great point. They don't want to make it look like you can just clap a CEO in broad daylight on the middle of the street and get away with it. So they got to throw somebody at you. They got to put a name up. They got to put a face up. Somebody guilty. The cops have to do their job. Even while everybody's celebrating and laughing and cheering, they got to come up with a name. So they came up with something.
All right, I want to take some stabs at that really quickly to push back against that, because those are some valid points. But I can tell you the issues he's had with his back and his insurance company for quite some time. Dude had an issue with his back, right, for many years, saw healthcare insurance up front. He also, his family made a lot of money in nursing homes. I don't know if they had any hospice, but I know they had nursing homes. So he would have probably seen people who ended up in those nursing homes that could have been saved simply if the insurance company approved those claims. So I think the evidence more for him turning into this person. Now, once again, he is the alleged person. We don't know for sure if it's him. The way everything kind of took place, the way the guy covered himself up, made the shots. I don't believe he was a professional because the gun got jammed a couple times. You can see him messing with it, right? So taking off with an e-bike, understanding where he was, where he had to go to escape. To me, I still see this, and I look at this as if it's not this guy, if he's being played off as a patsy, maybe Snow is right. They have to show you, hey, you can't just oust a guy. But I don't think they would have somebody this soon if they thought they could catch somebody, the actual assailant himself. So for me, when I'm looking at the situation, I still look at this guy, Luigi, as a possible guy who could have done this crime. I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on this, Fiorella or Matt, or we just want to hand it back to Indy, but I see a lot of evidence pointing that this could have radicalized this guy. And see that his parents had nursing homes. He was going to see so many people who were denied claims that died right in front of him. Go ahead.
Plus, I think Indy brings up the thing that Fee was saying earlier was, what's the motive? Well, the motive is solving this case quickly. There's your motive. And you get a guy that kind of checks some boxes. This is an easy one to open and shut it. And for me, like, the red flag was that there's nothing specific in the manifesto. There's nothing specific about this guy. Can we find the paper trail on Brian Thompson and his relationship, that this CEO affecting this guy Luigi and his family? Can we find that direct link? If that's not there directly, why this guy at the outside the meeting room in the middle of the street on the Wednesday morning? That's what we need to.
We do have this. We have him writing violence is necessary in an Amazon review, right, about the Unabomber, right? So we have there, right, him saying something specifically about the fact that if you make, in other words, if you make the peaceful revolution impossible, you make a violent revolution inevitable. We do have him saying right here that violence is necessary.
In January.
He might be checking boxes. I mean, look, the algorithm. There's an algorithm in place where you can find a guy that fits exactly a profile. Hey, this guy's perfect. Let's go with him. But again, it's vague. This is just vagueness. This is somebody who checks a certain box.
I have a devil's advocate scenario, Matt, for this. Why would they choose somebody like him who comes from a wealthy family, a family with money, a family an Ivy League guy? Why would they specifically choose just because they chose somebody randomly that fit into the algorithm? Or is there a specific reason they would choose someone? Because if I were them, I would choose somebody that is like poor, is like whose mom died or whose grandma died, whatever, and I would try to find somebody that can't defend themselves.
No, you want somebody like this because it can challenge the narrative that Americans are desperate and they're at the John Q character gets eliminated. If you have somebody of wealth coming to the table, they can paint a picture as he just lost it. He mentally snapped. He wasn't well. They can get people saying, "Oh, he was everything was going great," and then he had a mental breakdown and did something that was totally out of left
everything
field.
Wasn't going great for this guy. This guy's got years of complaining. He lost his grandma, right? Here it is. He lost his grandmother and he lost his grandfather, right? And there was evidence of this guy for quite some time talking negatively about the healthcare industry, right?
Except in his tweets.
Alien relative. Go ahead, buddy. Sorry.
Except in his tweets, you literally they searched his Twitter before for the word healthcare or for the word for a second word too, and they nothing, no match. It's there's a lot of weirdness here, and the fact that you can even question it on certain areas, but it looks good in other areas, actually serves that narrative. Because now, guess what we're not talking about? We're not talking about healthcare in America. We're not talking about the things that are also in this lineup. I think that this is also a narrative distractor.
About healthcare in America, though. I don't mean to interrupt you. Yes, we are. If you see the comments, more people are diving in going, oh, my God, I didn't know 70,000 people died a year because they were underinsured. They didn't know that. And a lot of people don't know these things until it hits them right in the face like it did for me. Because I thought my mom would be protected because she had health care.
I also see a lot of people getting kicked off Medicaid, and that could have had something to do with it. Again, but, you're making the case that his family had nursing homes. I don't know how much time this guy spent in his nursing homes. Did he ever set foot in the nursing homes? Plus, the guy had an Ivy League education that those nursing homes also paid for. So he sees both sides of this argument, and I don't know if maybe after getting that education, now all of a sudden he's got an attack of conscience. All of a sudden, after going through COVID and after going through everything else that he went through, now he's got this back thing. Look, I've had a back thing for 3 years. All right. And I've never thought about clapping the CEO of my health insurance company, even though I could see it. I could see why. But, coming from wealth, privilege, and the ability to be able to rehabilitate yourself, and a lot better than most others in this country, it looks like they're trying to set up narratives. And I kind of agree with Matt on this one, that it does take out the narrative of the poor, desperate person. If somebody is wealthy, calculating, and has a specific reason for doing this to target the healthcare industry. And the other problem is it really going to change the healthcare industry? It did. They stopped with the 2-hour limit or the multi-hour limit so far in those 3 states. They're pushing the limits so far. I call this almost like what they do with Elon Musk, where Elon goes so far and he says something so far extreme and everybody freaks out and goes, oh my God, I can't believe he just said that. And then he pulls back and does 1/10 of what he said he was going to do. And everyone goes, oh, okay, it's fine. That 1/10 is still fucking horrible every single time. And what they're doing is they're getting you, like, they're conditioning you with extremity and then backing off that extremity so that you'll accept whatever else they're looking to push. I genuinely feel that way. It's like, when you're negotiating, you ask for the moon and you settle on wherever you end up. And that's what I kind of feel like they're doing here.
You reach for the stars, you settle on the moon. Get it right there, buddy.
Wait, so if he didn't do it, then who did? I guess is my question. And
it's funny.
We don't.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I said I was
ahead.
on with I was on AM Wake Up with Teal. This could have been a woman very easily. You look at the body structure, you look at the facial structure of what we were able to see. Who deals mostly with the insurance companies in this country? It's the women. I mean, is it possible? I think so. You look at there's not enough for you to be able to say definitively that was even a man. Go ahead.
Could I show you guys? This is something that came up in my feed. I was going to put it on our show on Thursday, but we didn't have time on it. But this, there's might be some music behind it. So, Jayme, if you're able to, maybe just mute it. But this is a demonstration of a mask that is available.
Wow,
this.
you're getting really
right with the celebrity face. I saw that. It's crazy.
Is that Zelensky?
I'm just saying that you put a hood on any of this, you can do anything you want. There's a bunch. This is just something to be aware of. Look at this one.
It's creepy.
I mean, look at this. So you're seeing surveillance footage and saying, "Oh, we got a glimpse of the person," and then you go after someone that looks like that. This person doesn't look anything like that in real life. So this is something we just need to stay aware of and just be aware that this exists. So if that helps our conversation on this moving forward, we should just keep it in mind.
All I know is that I'm gonna get this shirt as soon as I can, because if it's a perception that Luigi did it, free Luigi, let's go already. That's what I'm doing.
And while you're buying that shirt, get this hat to go with it.
100,000 Luigi hats. I love it. That's amazing.
I do love the fact that in Central Park they had the assassin lookalike contest, and it was like people were still saying that the New York Police Department has them somewhere in New York. I was like, well, everybody should dress up like the assassin. So it'd be like that movie. What was it? The Thomas
V
Crown
for
Affair?
Vendetta.
V for
Vendetta. Were they
Thomas
right?
Crown Affairs, where they're all wearing the same thing. Yeah, they should have done.
So we should all go
It could
get
also
Luigi
be like
masks.
Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Luigi.
They had the lookalike contest in Washington Square Park this weekend. I don't know if you saw that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, in Washington Square Park they had it, not in Central Park. My bad. Yeah, and some guy won. He donated half the money to something I can't remember. V for Vendetta really holds today. If you haven't seen it in a while, it's such a great movie. If you go see it nowadays, especially with everything we've been witnessing in the last couple of years. Indy, let everybody know where they can find you. We got to get you out of here because we have one tiny subject to cover real quick to get some opinions, since we have to. We're over 2 hours right now in the stream. But go ahead and give your opinions and let everybody know where they can find you. And thank you for all the hard work you do. You don't get enough credit for what you do, man. You're out there pushing us. You've been pushing us for quite some time. And it's awesome that you're not only a friend, but that you're on our side.
Thank you guys, really. IndieMediaToday.com is my Substack. You can subscribe over there. All my links are at indieleft.media, INDIE left.media. You can find me on Twitter at IND News. You can see that. That's up there. And at INN, of course, at Get Indie News and IndieNews.network. That's all the guys that I work with and my fam that I do all my shows with. So, again, love you. Appreciate you guys having me on, and we'll see you guys soon.
You keep on coming on here like this. They're gonna have an indie look-alike contest, and nobody's gonna know what you're gonna look like, man. They're gonna be hiding behind a hoodie and everything with the eyes. And is that indie? We don't know if that's indie or not.
I am Spartacus. Hey, you guys know what I look like. So look, I have photographic evidence with you, Pasta. So you definitely know what I look like, bro. See everyone.
Love you, brother. Love you. All right. Indie news, everybody. Does anybody want to say anything about this real quick? Because I just want to get one quick question, one quick statement. We should be out in 10, 15 minutes about this last one because I think it's really important. Americans voting. Well, I'm very Jayme is the meme king. All right, listen. Last quick statement too. We also have inside. It's been all over the news too as well. Matt, I think I'm really glad that you brought some of the right wing versus left wing kind of mentality, the way the mainstream media tries to pull people into these kind of paradigms, right? This team or that team, the team sports mentality. It's awful. And Fox News is just as guilty as CNN and left wing news. We had the situation where he was acquitted. His name is Daniel Penny. If you guys don't remember, he was, and I'll bring up the article first real quick. Well, actually, let's bring up the video real quick. Play the video real quick about who Daniel Penny is. He was the Marine that choked somebody to death on a subway. Let's play this video. And fam, I want to give you the first crack at this one, on what this guy has to say. You ready, Jayme? Jayme. There it is. Let's bring it on up. And we'll play this real quick. This is who Daniel Penny was. He was acquitted yesterday. Was he a hero? Was he a villain? Is it somewhere in between? Are we getting it? Are we missing it? Your thoughts. Here it is.
The Daniel Penny situation reveals exactly what's wrong with our approach to racism in America, woke culture, and identity politics. For those of you who haven't been following, Daniel Penny is a white former Marine who had an altercation with a homeless black man named Jordan Neely. Jordan Neely had a history of being arrested and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. One day, they were both on a New York City subway. In a moment of desperation and frustration, Daniel Penny expressed that he was tired of being homeless, tired of being hungry, ready to serve life in prison, and ready to die. In addition to that, he said, "Someone is going to die today." After saying that, he threw his jacket on the floor, and other people on the train started to feel unsafe. Daniel Penny decided to step in and restrain Jordan Neely until the authorities could intervene. And he wasn't the only one who tried to restrain him. Another person of color named Eric Gonzalez tried to restrain him too. Unfortunately, due primarily to the chokehold, Jordan Neely ended up passing away. And it's also worth noting that he did have drugs in his system at the time. Now, rather than people looking at this through the lens of safety and a schizophrenic homeless man who said that someone is going to die today, needing to be restrained, movements like Black Lives Matter have managed to turn this into a racial issue. And they're claiming that the reason why this happened is because Jordan Neely is a black man. Now, as a black man, I want to give you some perspective. A few years ago, I was in a park in Santa Monica, California, when a white homeless man harangued me and called me the N-word and threatened to kill me for 10 minutes. Now, fortunately, I was not trapped on a train with him and he kept his distance. However, I felt extremely unsafe. And the reason I felt unsafe was not because he was calling me the N-word, but because he was threatening to kill me. And herein lies the problem. Rather than focusing on the fact that this was a homeless man on the streets of a democratically run city that is so poorly run that we keep on spending money on homelessness while not actually resolving the issue, somehow we all get distracted and get gaslit into thinking that this is primarily an issue about race rather than safety. And what that leads politicians to do is continue to pander to us and play identity politics with their policies because they know that rather than focusing on their ineptitude and the fact that they're allowing homelessness to run rampant, instead we're going to allow ourselves to be distracted and view everything through a racial lens. Now, here's the thing. Racism still is an issue in America, but it's not nearly as much of an issue as it used to be. And I would say it's not even in the top 3 of existential issues facing America, because we're dealing with the threat of a nuclear holocaust and a health crisis that is making us all fatter, sicker, and more depressed. And rather than dealing with those issues, we keep on getting distracted by the most emotionally laden issues. And all that's doing is causing us to be more divided, because rather than focusing on the content of each other's characters, we keep viewing everything through the lens of race.
Fam, I don't necessarily agree with everything this guy said there, but he did make some points. And I just want to point out really quickly, and I would bring it up that, and it's here. Okay. One thing that I want to point out is, and I talked about this with Matt beforehand, 6 minutes. 6 minutes. And it says right here, I mean, held him in a chokehold for 6 minutes. On Monday, a Manhattan jury acquitted Daniel Penny, a 26-year-old white man who choked Jordan Neely, a homeless man, unarmed black man, to death on the subway in May 2023. Penny initially faced charges of criminally negligent homicide and second-degree manslaughter, but the manslaughter charge was dropped by prosecutors on Friday due to a deadlocked jury. A manslaughter charge requires proof of the defendant recklessly caused another person's death, while criminally negligent homicide charges relate to serious, blameworthy conduct, the Associated Press notes. Okay, I just want to point out that he held the guy for 6 minutes in a chokehold. We know, me and Matt talked about this as men. If we're trying to restrain somebody, maybe an arm bar, maybe a headlock, the doors opened up and people were able to escape. So he was protecting the people from Jordan Neely, is what he was saying. This is what Daniel Penny said in this court case. I'd also like to point out that there are plenty of videos of Mr. Neely hitting other people, hitting women, not being unbalanced, having fights with people in the streets, right? So there's more to it than just this is a black man being choked by a white man. This was an mentally fit man who was on the streets homeless for quite some time, who did say those things. I mean, there were people who were saying, hey, man, let him go. You're going to kill him. And there were people out there that were afraid and ran out of the subway car. So what do you think the major problem is, fam? Do you think this is justice or not? Or is there something we need to be looking at? We'll start with you, fam, and then you can go after that, Matt.
I think this is just a symptom of the greater problem that exists in our country. The fact that we're not dealing with the homeless crisis, the fact that we're not dealing with the economic crisis, the housing crisis, and we're so focused on, well, not us, but we're being made to focus by these politicians, both liberals and conservatives, on one, the immigrants and the criminals coming and getting us. And the Democrats focus on everybody's racist and everybody's trying to kill each other because they're racist, white supremacists. So these play on each other clearly. And so what we have is this whole situation where you have somebody that could argue that they were trying to protect everybody else, but you said it yourself. He didn't have to put him in a chokehold. He didn't have to do that, but he did. You can't say that he was 100% sure trying to kill this guy. If you're going to argue it in a court, you can't really say that because people were afraid for their lives. People were in danger. And there's not enough police to go around. There's not enough safety to go around. This is happening at a place where the police weren't going to get there on time. And if we know anything about police, they've made things a lot worse before when you bring them in. So that wouldn't necessarily turn out right. Why I think there is still a racial element to it from the perspective of some people is if Perry, the guy that was charged, Penny, would have gotten off had he been a black man that did it under the justice system. I don't necessarily think that would have been as likely. And the reason I say that is because there still is systemically a justice system that is more in favor in a racial spectrum. However, that is changing into a more class spectrum where anybody that's poor is now completely vulnerable to this. I think there was more of a racial gap. I still think that, as this gentleman said, it exists, but it's certainly not the number one right now. And I think we have allowed ourselves to get dragged into it because I think when people hear this argument, they say, oh no, but racism is still a thing. And it's like, yeah, it's still a thing. But what we're saying is it's being weaponized and used against the very people it claims to protect. And we have seen this with the Democratic Party tokenizing Black and Hispanic people for votes, trying to get them on their side, and how that's backfired now with Donald Trump coming in and getting some of these people, because these people have realized they're being used for these sort of tokenization politics of the neoliberal establishment. So I think ultimately the fact that this happened is a failure of society. Society has failed to make people feel safe. In Russia, I don't have to worry about anybody of any color coming in and threatening to kill people on the metro. That's just not going to happen. The metro is completely clean. It's devoid of any criminals or drugs and all of that, because they have taken it upon themselves to make it a priority for that not to happen. In the United States, it's completely the opposite. It's a free-for-all. And so, yeah, you're going to have these situations where there's people of multiple ethnicities having a face-off, and you are going to have these people of multiple ethnicities having different backgrounds and having different belief systems. So it's all going to mesh together, and you're not going to be able to say it 100% is or isn't. But what you are going to be able to say is it's happened as a result of the failures of the government and the failures of the state and the system. And that's what I think is ultimately what we need to highlight, that they failed the American people, that they continue to fail them, and that more of these incidents are going to happen as all people start taking their own measures to protect themselves with guns, with whatever they have. Because you know, Pasta, as well as I do, being in Los Angeles, you can get robbed, you can get completely attacked. People have been attacked by homeless people in Los Angeles. That is a fact. I'm not saying that every homeless person is a criminal. We're the first people to say no, or that every homeless person is a drug addict. We're the first people to also say that is not necessarily the case. But are we under an epidemic of poverty and drug addiction? Yes, we're very sick people in a sick country, and that's not being dealt with on purpose because they don't want us to go after those in power.
Matt?
So let's look at this from all angles here. So Craig, you started with the chokehold element. We did speak about this, and my personal experience. I worked security in the nightclub scene in LA for over a decade. So
Yep.
I know there's.
Yeah. He's an ex-Marine too, so right, he would know. So
yeah, so we know there's certain ways you go about, physical contact when you need to make physical restraint on people. And as a citizen, you can make a citizen's arrest, wait for the police to come. There's certain ways to do that, and we get trained to do that in different fields like security. And yeah, chokeholds are not okay. Period. But with that said, does the average citizen know that? Not necessarily. I will say this off the bat: if a police officer were to have done this, they absolutely need to be charged with this crime. Absolutely. Police, there is no other way around it. You cannot do that when you are a professional in your field, you're trained, you're not a citizen, you're supposed to be protecting citizens. You can't do that. For this guy, for Daniel Penny, I would say that we need to give some pun intended, breathing room for people who are trying their best to protect themselves and the people around them in that moment. He didn't maybe make the right choice with that particular hold, that chokehold, but he was never trained in that. And I think that if we allow people like that to get locked up for going too far without the training, sends the wrong message to people who have good intentions. As long as you can prove you have good intentions, you don't have bad intentions, you're trying to do good. We want to let other people feel like they can step up when they need to step up, and maybe just have a better discussion, a better dialogue about this in general, in society in general, and let people know what they can do. I compare this to CPR, right? So when you see somebody choking, nobody wants to help out if they think they're going to end up in jail. If there's a doctor present, if somebody that's trained professional, they better do what they need to do, and they better do it in the right way, or they could be held liable. If there's nobody present and somebody's choking to death, I hope somebody will rush to help. And if they do something inaccurate and it might lead to their death, that sucks. But sitting there and watching somebody die or watching somebody commit harm on other people and not doing anything about it, that's the wrong message we want to send. So with that said, this acquittal, I'm not against the acquittal. The thing that makes me more upset, though, is watching Black Lives Matter leaders get furious about this, and they're going in the wrong direction. As you said, Fee, the part that needs to be emphasized is if Daniel Penny was a Black man, there's a damn good chance he would not have been acquitted. That should be what Black Lives Matter leaders are upset about. If it was a white, a Black man going to prison for this, then you get angry. Then you say, this is not fair. The justice system is rigged against people who are poor, people who are minorities. Then you can get upset. But they're on the wrong side of this. What? So you're in the streets right now, wanting more damage done to people. You want them to be locked up in a prison system that is against people in general. That's what you're angry about? That's the wrong side of history to be on. So I just really cringe at that. The fact that there's people in the streets, lock more people up. No, this is the wrong battle for Black Lives Matter. They should save it for when somebody gets incarcerated and gets convicted. That should not be that way. They should be fighting for that. So they got it backwards on this one.
And it's not just, this isn't a national Black Lives Matter that's doing this. This is Hawk Newsom Black Lives Matter, which is separated from the centralized, Patrice Cullors, national Black Lives Matter. This is the guy who walked into a Trump rally with about 6 people wearing Black Lives Matter shirt, and they allowed him to come on the stage and speak, and everybody was hugging and high-fiving after. It was an amazing moment, but it's surprising to see Hawk Newsom take this avenue. Let me just put a bow on this real quickly, and then we'll get out of here because we've been spent enough time for the day. Long show. We want to thank everybody for watching. I wouldn't have been upset if he would have gotten a manslaughter or a wrongful death suit because he did choke him for 6 minutes, and that's just going too far. People had left the car and whatnot. He's a Marine. He was strong enough. He should have realized that he could have held the guy other ways. But to say that this guy wouldn't have been a threat to people around him is just a lie. There's videos of Jordan Neely out there, once again, not mentally fit, mental illness over here, hitting people, putting people in harm's way. I mean, there's a case, and the guy even said he wanted to kill himself or bring somebody down with him. So, I mean, that is evident there. But what Fiorella talked about is it's being avoided. This is an economic issue. And this is something I learned from Lahaina more than anything, that when people have nothing left to go home to, they have no job, they have no house, they're left out in the open, it doesn't make a difference how much therapy you get them. That person's going to be very, very depressed, right? So the fact that we have so many homeless people on the street, close to 1 million right now, is part of the problem itself. People are losing hope, right? They want to kill themselves. They don't find themselves any reason to live and go on with their lives because they have nothing to go home to, right? They don't even have a home to go to in this particular case with Jordan Neely. Also, the healthcare industry. All right, not only the fact that there's not enough healthcare to help people, it's probably what they did to this guy in the first place. They probably did the normal healthcare situation when it comes to the mental illness, drug the guy up, give him this, give him that, and then when he can't afford to do anything and those services run out, now he's really chemically imbalanced, and this is a problem we have on the streets right now. Now they're out there looking for stuff that's going to put them at ease from what the doctor gave them or what they were prescribed from in the first place. We don't know the situation with Jordan Neely. Maybe somebody has a little bit more depth in it, but the system itself is wrong. We don't have a healthcare system. We have a for-profit sick care system. And those are the things that needed to be highlighted in the situation. It is just a tragedy what happened, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of it has to do from the systemic issues we have in the United States, from the economical issues and the lack of healthcare, proper healthcare. We have a sick care system for profit. So many things, these things are bound to happen if we continue to have a poor economy out there and we don't have the proper healthcare system in place. So that I really do agree with Fiorella with her statements when she said that, and I haven't written down, that these are the serious problems that happen, right? And it is a shame the way this is kind of weaponized by both sides. You know what I'm saying? For Fox News to just go, oh, all right, he was defending these people and not even question the fact. I haven't heard anybody on Fox News. Remember, I told you, Matt, I'm like, did I hear that this guy was held in a chokehold for 6 minutes? Because I didn't hear that on Fox. I didn't hear that on Newsmax, right? I don't watch these stations that often, but when I peek at that, they left those part of the equations out. right? So, I mean, that's what we have over here. I wonder how Daniel Penny does feel, because there is a mindset that maybe he was just so amped up that he didn't realize what he was doing because he saw a threat out there, and that guy has proven to be a threat before in the past. Maybe not his fault, right? They say individual responsibility, but I think a lot has to do with the systemic issues we have. The economy, stupid, right? People don't have stuff to go home to. They don't want to live anymore. You know, in Lahaina, the suicide rate has jumped up. People are jumping off buildings because they have nothing. They have no economy. They have nothing to go home to. They have no reason to live. And we have to look at that and really kind of look at that as the focus of these issues and these problems. Like I said, just like when it came to Zimmerman, when they told George Zimmerman, do not follow Trayvon Martin. He followed him. He definitely deserves to get manslaughter at the least. The 6 minutes choking the guy, right? Somebody screaming, hey, man, let him go. You're going to kill him, right? People left the card. They got out of the subway. Who are you protecting at this point now when you're continuing to choke him for 6 minutes? So it's a tragedy, but it all stems from the problem, the systemic issues we have with our economics and our healthcare. Guys, got anything left to say before we get out of here?
No, great conversation all around. I'm glad we got this. Is what you just said. Just to top off what you said there, Pasa. Yeah, of course, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, they're not going to have thoughtful conversations like this. They just don't. They have to cherry pick their information to fit their narratives in advance. They do reverse engineering on those channels, guys. Just so you know, the reverse engineering is, this is the outcome we want. How do we get there? They go backwards from there, and they start the story with, good evening, this just in, and they already have their talking points cherry-picked so they can get to their conclusion that's predetermined. So luckily, fortunately, there's enough of us doing this and drawing people over to this. People are tired of the mainstream, blueprint. It's not honest. It's not real. It doesn't work. It doesn't help anyone. So yes, let's keep having these conversations. So yeah, thanks for having these 3 great topics today. I love them all. Thoughtful conversations.
We learned a lot. We'll be having some news come on up. We're going to start getting things situated. It is the holiday seasons. We'll be figuring out what we're doing in the new year. We'll be talking about the changes, but it was great to have you guys come along today, all 3 of us, and have these fun conversations. Even though there are sad situations, it's great to have these conversations because those conversations are lacking out there in the real world. Guys, go to the YouTube, the TruthWire. The Convo couch is now morphed to the TruthWire. Go to the Homeless Left Rumble. He doesn't have a YouTube because they took it down, just like they took down Fiorella's YouTube. I still have the Pasta to Go, the number 2 YouTube out there as well. And I have a Rumble as well. Fee, you still have your Rumble, right? Is it Fiorella in Moscow? Is that the name of the Rumble? That's out there. The Twitter handles are right there, guys. Share, like. We're still on the Rockfin for a while until they close things down over there. Who knows what's going to happen with that network? But thank you all for showing up. Thank you for hanging in there. Thank you to Jayme CheeseSlice on the 1s and 2s. That's it. It's time to be out of here. We'll see you soon. Fam, you want to say truth out, or is that not going to be the thing now?
No, that's not going to be the thing, but everybody have a good rest of your day. Have a good rest of your week. We'll see you soon.
Oh, yeah.
Bye.
Thursday, Homeless Left. Fam, if you want to jump on in, let us know. Dr. Ben Marble.
Yep.
Dr. Ben Marble will be joining the show. Come check us on out. The Homeless Left, Pasta to Go, dual stream this Thursday, 3 o'clock Eastern, 12 Pacific. Thank you all for watching. Truth out.
No.